1947, we have received and analyzed between 1 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources.
Fleet of them, what's on the ASA? My God. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, well, if there's like anything.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
Unidentified Anomalous Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the Unidentified Anomalous Podcast. As always, I am Digby Furno, and joining me is my fantastic co-host, Tom cortexzero. Tom, how are you doing today? I get a round of applause, huh?
I'm doing all right, man. It's UFO Twitter week.
It is. It's
UFO Twitter week. A lot of stuff going on. Shout out to Astral for putting it together. Shout out to everybody involved. Obviously, I'm going to be partaking in quite a few events this week. Got a creator space, content creator space coming up on Sunday. Tonight, helping to co-host the space as well with our friend Fringe. And it's just a really cool time for the people that are in the UFO community, even if you're not someone who is a regular on Twitter, to come together and talk about these particular subjects, learn, share. It's fun, man. Astral has done such an amazing job each time he's put this together, but this is kind of special because it's the last one that will be called UFO Twitter week. Next time around, it's going to be UFO X week, but really looking forward to it. That's why it's in the title of our video. I really wanted to put the word out there. Although there are events scheduled, you don't have to have your event scheduled either. All you have to do, if you want to do a space, you want to do a stream, even if it or even a post, whatever it may be, all you have to do is add the hashtag UFO Twitter week, and you're part of the family right there.
Look, what's really great about UFO Twitter Week as well is the fact that it helps bring the community together. And there are times when our community can be quite divisive. And UFO Twitter Week is a time where actually we get the opportunity to come together as a community and really show support to one another. So if you're out there and you have the time, log on to any of the Twitter spaces that are being run this week. As Tom said, him and myself will be on one on Sunday evening. And so we're really looking forward to that. But it really is a time just to show that we can unite as a community. So please do us a favor, get behind UFO Twitter Week, get behind Astral, and really let's come together as a community at a time when we really need to come together as a community. There's an awful lot going on around the world at the moment, and we've had a couple of quieter weeks. Let's admit it. But it literally is the calm after the storm and before the next storm, because there's a lot still to come. We've heard a lot of news this year as 2023 is rounding up to a close. 2024 promises to be a really great year. So let's just use this time at the moment to really catch a breath and come together as a community, because there's going to be a big year ahead of all of us next year. That's for sure.
Yeah, you got to hope that, aside from the things that are going on in the world, there's obviously all types of different battles that are occurring even within our own community regarding certain topics that I won't name. And the one thing I just want to stress about that is, I hope everybody at some point can just take a step back and just realize that, when you get angry or you want to start spewing hate towards somebody, that there is another person on the other side of that computer.
Yeah,
that is a human being just like you. And, we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But at the end of the day, we're supposed to, in this community especially, we're supposed to work together, because that's the only way we're going to get the answers. That's the only way that we're going to make any sort of headway. This is not something that is sustainable where we are just bickering back and forth. Like the amount of energy and time and effort that goes into, say, making a hit piece about somebody, maybe next time, consider taking that and putting it towards putting something together about triangular UFOs or like, cases that predate Roswell. Just get creative. Like just let's stick to the subject and let's just, if there's somebody that you don't like, still tell them good morning and wish them well. I'm telling you, it's good karma. Um, and it's just a better way to live. It's easier, honestly. It is. It's way easier.
Tom, I think you might have a troller in the comments section.
Right. Wow. Yeah. It's funny too because it's like it's not creative at all. It's like I feel like I'm looking at like a 13-year-old. It's like, yo, dude, I found this UFO guy on YouTube, and I'm just gonna talk shit. I have dealt with trolls like more than you could possibly imagine, especially dating back to like when I was just kind of streaming games and just just doing regular random wonky streaming type content. This is nothing. This is nothing. Trust me. I used to get bombed. Like, but in any event, Digby, how was your week, sir?
Can you see me?
It says connected device.
Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi has just gone out. Now it's just come back.
Oh,
That's
man.
what you need.
So that's how
Just
your
what you
week
need.
went, huh?
Yeah, that's how my week went. So sorry, I missed all the bit about you being trolled by somebody. So
No,
we
it's
can
just
go back to that.
I've dealt with it. I've dealt with it over the years. It's really nothing new, man. And
My video will come back in a second. Until then, you get the pleasure of my audio only while I try and sort out my system. This is the problem with me being in the mountains, I think. In the middle.
that's probably part of it, right? No, I said, how was your week?
My week was good, man. It's every day's a learning day for me at the moment, and getting used to a new style of life, which is great, and it's a different pace of life, and it's fantastic, and it's nice to leave so much of the hustle and bustle of the day-to-day world behind me, and just concentrate on family and living my life, which is something I do not take for granted now, because it's something that a lot of people do not get the opportunity to do. So I'm very, very thankful for that indeed.
Definitely. That's good to hear. I'm really excited for the opportunity that your family has to be able to travel like you are and to be able to see different parts of the world. I mean, it's almost overwhelming to think about. I'm like, that would actually be really like quite an intense experience too. Plus, tying into what we normally talk about, it provides you with the potential opportunity to go and maybe visit certain historic sites related to the phenomenon or hotspots that someone like me may not normally have the chance to visit because it's overseas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look at that. I have a video camera back.
There it is.
Yes, my wife just messaged me saying very low internet here too. Yes, if maybe she got off it, I might have some more. Darling, stop stealing the bandwidth.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, sorry, I can really concentrate now. So no, the week's been absolutely fantastic. We had a meal shared with a couple of other families outside this evening. So I did a paella that I cooked on an open fire with the beautiful sunset that you can see behind me in the video there. It really is like living in heaven. It really is. I get to spend an awful lot of time with my family and my wife, kids, and just concentrate on living life rather than just being a slave to that hustle and bustle in the 9 to 5. I count myself to be incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity that I have. I really do. And I just wish that more people realized that actually, if they wanted to live that life, they could do too. But we become slaves to the stuff that we own. And I've said this before, and I know it sounds a bit strange, but the more you buy, the more you feel like you should buy. And then you repeat that process over and over and over again. And
No, it's not strange at all. I don't think so. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty spot on. You know, you and I and everybody else, we live in a very material driven world, right? So that's right in line with that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting, you can't tell right now, obviously, because I've got my green screen up, but I'm sitting in a garage that's attached to the place where me and my family are staying at the moment. And there is weather warnings for tomorrow for a storm. And it would sound like from outside that storm is encroaching on us rather rapidly. So I will say now, if I do lose internet, Tom will be taking over. But I'm hopeful that I'll be able to stay on for the whole show.
I hope so too, man. I hope
might
so
be
too.
questionable, but we will try our best.
We have a good one lined up here. We have a special guest coming on that we haven't said their name. They're not someone that's necessarily like, you know, famous in our community or anything, but maybe known if you're someone who regularly watches the show.
Somewhat of a Trojan horse, I would say.
Well, that's a bad thing, right? Does that mean he's secretly coming here to destroy the show?
No, it's just like, you know, there's more to him than originally met the eye. So he's a regular viewer. And probably our biggest fan, I would say, really. I mean, but Paul has been on the chat since day one, and he's been a massive supporter of the show. And I've been speaking to him recently, especially when he found out that I was going traveling around the world and starting in Europe. Paul's in Albania. I'm currently in Spain, so not a million miles away.
He's from the United States?
He is. Yeah, he is. And he moved over to Albania a number of years ago, I believe for work, and loved it so much he decided to stay. So he's coming on as a guest tonight. He's got some great stories to tell. And I'm not going to say too much about his background right now because I want him to say what he feels comfortable with when he comes on the show. But,
right, we have to be careful with that technically.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I've heard people say about Ross Coulthart, you know, and all these people and go, oh, if you know this information, why don't you just let it out there? Well, the simple reason is if you start going behind people's backs and telling the world what they've asked you not to tell, then you won't get too many opportunities like that in the future. So we're doing the same thing. We will always respect people and their privacy and what they do want to say and what they don't want to say. We're not here to get anybody in trouble. So the interview tonight is not necessarily going to be led by Paul, but we're going to go with what he feels comfortable talking about because, you know, that's just the way that we roll. But it's nice to realize that one of our key listeners that literally dials in every week to listen you know, has had his own experiences. He's going to talk about some experiences that he's heard about from the past with his family, and we'll dive into that. And hopefully, we'll be granted the opportunity to talk somewhat about his past job history. But if he doesn't want to touch on that, then that's absolutely fine too. So we're just going to go with the flow report tonight and see what we hear. Really, basically, I think is
looking
the best
forward to
way to go about it.
Yeah, and you know, again. Like I'll piggyback off of what you were saying. You know, sometimes you have to play the game. It gets a little tricky. You gain sources, and that comes with trust. So if they request something of you that they tell you something in confidence, but it's really juicy, and you wish you could tell people about it. You know. I do believe, though, there exist situations where sometimes you can kind of throw everything to the wind and just blurt certain things out. But I mean, talking very special circumstances, but typically when anyone reaches out to me, if they make any type of request like that, the first thing that comes to mind is their privacy, and typically, that's usually the reason why they make that request, you know. And I know what it's like to try to protect my own privacy because I like when I take certain videos, like I have to make sure that there are certain landmarks that I don't show. I'm trying to be careful about saying where I'm from. Everybody knows I'm from New Jersey, but I don't want to just come right out and give you my address. You know, I don't know. It's the internet. I
Yeah.
don't know who's watching. So, and
I can
speaking of
because I don't
Paul
have
is
an
in the chat.
address. Paul's in
That's
the
right.
chat, is he? That's great because I
That's
literally
right.
just sent him a message because there was a slight balls up this evening because we arranged this for a certain time, and I thought I was coming on live at 10:30, the time where I am at the moment, which is an hour ahead of the UK. So I used to come on at 9:30 in the UK, but it turns out that you buggers in the US haven't changed your clocks yet, have you? So
yet.
whereas everybody else has gone back an hour, you haven't yet. So everything got pushed up at the last minute. I still thought I had an hour to get ready for the show, and then Tom kindly told me that we had about 15 minutes left. So
Yeah, that's right. You would have liked the skit that they just did on SNL the other day, where it's like it's supposed to be like a bunch of Revolutionary War heroes, like they're like the founding fathers sitting in the woods talking about like their ideas for this great, beautiful new country that would become the United States. But all they're talking about is how they're basically just gonna ignore the rest of the world and create things like inches and centimeters. It's just like it's actually really, really funny. Some of it's very dry, but I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So
nice.
obviously our show is typically segmented, but since Paul is already here,
yeah, should we? Yeah.
I think we should.
Should we mix things up a bit this evening and do it in a bit of a different order?
Yeah, why not? Why don't we just jump right
especially
into this
as my
interview
internet,
and,
especially as my internet may cut out.
Exactly that reason. But yeah, I don't want to make him wait too long either. And I'm really eager to talk to him because obviously he's a really big fan of our show. He's been very kind to us, and he's got a lot of interesting things to say. So yeah, like we can do our conversation with him, and then we can talk about some of the news that we have. And of course, I already have a question lined up for the very end for speculation station.
Oh, good. Let's just hope my internet lasts till the end.
I hope to God that it does, but if it doesn't, I will take the controls.
I am concerned. Right, let's jump right into it.
This week's guest.
Tom, can you do the honors of pressing the button for this part? Because my internet apparently is not good enough.
Let's see. There's Paul. What's up, Paul?
This week's guest.
No.
Oh, we have a double whammy guest.
This
two
whammy.
Two intros for the price.
I didn't get one. I didn't even get one. So it's. I am hands-off control for the rest of the evening because nothing is working properly on my end. Tom, you are now in control.
I like that.
The pressure.
I feel like my hands got heavier. Like there's some
just
sort
don't
of power
go
flowing
crazy with power.
Yeah, no, I'll try not to become a bloodthirsty totalitarian within seconds of gaining control of everything. Sandy's in the chat too. Hello, Sandy. Paul, you have been in our chat since I believe episode 1. So why don't you do us a solid and introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Well, my name is Paul. I am a former 3-letter agency software engineer. Let's just put it like that. I can't say too much about that because I'm not sure what disclosure I can do or not without getting in trouble. But basically, I just wrote a lot of programs for many different government groups. One of them was basically like an email snooper, things like that. So part of the big regret of my life has been, that I was one of the guys that helped kind of make the Big Brother state. So I'm not too proud of that, but that's also one of the reasons I left. But yeah, I go way back with that, and I've always been able to see things because when you're a programmer, you see things that nobody else can really see. So you have to have access. So there's certain things I've seen, and some I can talk about, some I can't. But that's pretty much me. I still do some contracts for them here and then, every now and then. I mostly work in gigs. I live in Albania for the past 4.5 years. I don't live in the U.S. anymore. So it's dark here. And that's about it for me.
Well, we're happy to have you, Paul. Obviously, we see you because you always have a rhyming catchphrase for each episode, which is I always wait to see it. I always know it's going to be there.
Something. When you get to like 15, 16, I have no idea what I'm going to say for that.
At that point, we'll start using like emojis or like, we'll figure it out from there. So you, I'm just based on what I know of your background from what Digby and I have spoken about over the past couple of days, you essentially at one point for a 3-letter agency, alphabet agency that we're not going to name, you wrote software that essentially had the ability to spy. That's pretty much like the gist of it?
This is early on. So this is late 90s. At the time it was called Spider. It's not called that anymore. That's why I can say that. But if you were writing an email and you said, man, Tom, you're the bomb, it would flag that, send it to a server, check it. Now they're using AI to scan those things, but to know whether it's like a threat or if it's innocuous or not. So I was writing one part of that. It's very intrusive, kind of like it was terrible. Even working there was terrible. I was telling Digby about some of this stuff, but basically, like I remember one time. So there was 2-man teams. So we had 2 men, and there's a hallway, and there's doors along the hallway, and there's literally you can't talk to anybody else. You're very highly compartmentalized. And when we check in, we go through metal detectors and things like that. So we're not carrying like hard drives and whatnot out and stuff like that. So, but I remember seeing a guy all the time. Like I never could talk to him, but I remember seeing him all the time. I remember being out on a weekend. It was a Saturday night. I was at Applebee's, and I think this is in Mississippi, at one of the data centers there. But I saw the guy. I'm like, oh, hey, man, you're the guy I see all the time. When we check into the place, and he's like, oh, yeah, man, how's it going? And then like 2 seconds, I'm like, yeah, my name's Paul. It's good to see you, man. I never get to introduce myself. And I feel a hand on my shoulder. Somebody touches me and goes, you're not supposed to be talking to each other. You're not supposed to be doing this at all. Please follow procedures and separate or leave the building or sit at 2 separate tables, but you can't be seen together or talking to each other. I'm like, oh, holy cow. I'm like, it's Saturday night. So I know they're watching literally everything that I'm doing.
You're just out to eat at a restaurant.
Just at a restaurant.
Which means that if you hadn't done that, they were already there, waiting for something like that to occur. That's insane.
It was really, really highly secured, high pressure, highly compartmentalized. You couldn't talk to anybody outside. Like they didn't want you to be able to put together what you're doing, but it was pretty obvious what you're doing because some of the things you couldn't help but know. When you're writing certain things with software, you just either know it or you don't. It's like, okay, why am I writing something that scans this and searches for these particular words?
Right.
Obvious,
you see the keywords and such.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess we'll start with this. Did you, for any reason at any time, ever enter into the search query anything regarding UFOs?
I did. The one thing that I can kind of talk about that I thought was interesting, because a lot like you, Tom, I was really interested. I had an experience when I was a kid, and I was hugely interested. I read everything under the sun. So at one point I was reading, I think it was Paul Lovewillet's work. It's called The Secrets of Anti-Gravity Propulsion and Nikola Tesla or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact title. But really good book. And so I was really heavily into Thomas Townsend Brown. So I actually searched electrogravitics, and stuff came up. There was like, I didn't see like blueprints or anything like that, but there was different companies had requests for their electrogravitic programs, things like that. So because that's a little bit out in the open, like with like Stephen Greer talks about some of that, I think that's probably a true thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of documentation floating around the internet. God knows what's real and what isn't. But I think there's
Yeah.
enough out there to at least assume that some of it's probably true. And my grandfather used to tell me different things. He used to tell me because he fought and he was stationed over in Korea for an entire year. So like he was in the service for a while, and he used to he knew I was interested in UFOs as a kid, but there were two things he used to always mention as reality. The anti-gravitics and like electromagnetic experimentation, for levitation and such with objects that seemingly should not be, suspended in air. And then he would also always bring up the Philadelphia experiment.
Really?
Yeah. He used to always say that was absolutely, without question, real. But he never elaborated as to how he knew that.
That's what.
I don't know.
Right. That's another thing that kind of led me into the studies of this. Is my father was a military. He's a colonel, a full bird colonel, and
Wow.
he was kind of head of over the German American troop movement. So if in American troop movements in Germany, I should say. So he was he had a lot of really high level friends, and I remember like German generals literally coming to my house. And I grew up just north of New Orleans, Louisiana, coming to my house in Louisiana, and like they gave him a piece of the Berlin Wall and things like that. But there was one particular friend. His name was Patrick Mahoney. He's passed away now. That's why I can kind of talk about him. But he was a general at the Pentagon. He was a very, very prominent guy, salt of the earth. And my dad was a kind of an avid writer, and he wrote a story, and he was reading the story over the campfire. And my dad was a doctor, a physician as well, so he was kind of a jack of all trades.
Wow.
But he was reading the story, and it was about these three kids, that he was driving along the side of the road. These three kids were walking on the side of the road. He picked them up, gave them a ride home, and when he went to shake their hand to tell them goodbye, they had 3 fingers on each hand. They didn't have like 4, so they were aliens basically. So, and that was this whole big story, like just just creative writing. It was terrible.
I like that.
Yeah, but Patrick, we were sitting by the campfire. My dad read the story to him, and Patrick's, he's just half drunk. He's like, well, we got a treaty with them, so they would have never had any interaction with them with people there. They know this stuff, and he wasn't like really kind of joking. It was kind of like hey, yeah, they would never do that. They would have never gotten in the car because they got a treaty with them. And he's just drinking his beer, and I'm like, oh, okay. Nobody's laughing, nobody's saying like, ha ha ha, real funny, Patrick. I'm like, wow, okay. And I remember being like 13 or 14 at that time. And I was like, wow, I really want to study this thing. Like, I want to know what they know. And my father, being a colonel and being an author, being a doctor and all these things, he was the lead. He went and got his private investigator's license, and he was the lead investigator for MUFON in that region. And I'm like, why is he doing this? Yeah, I'm like, there's something to this. Like he was obsessed with it, and he never talked about it with me, like ever. Maybe a few light conversations about his stories or things like that. So it was really weird, but it definitely drove me into like looking at a lot of this stuff, and I wanted to learn a lot about this stuff.
That's really, really interesting. And it's funny, you're talking about the treaties, because obviously that was a conversation that occurred a long time ago. And let's fast forward now. Now, David Grush is saying as much. And, there's always been the Eisenhower rumors and such. What do you make of that? Do you think that that's actually something that's going on? Is it like a pivot of some kind? Are they trying to pull the wool over our eyes? What are we really looking at here?
I really don't know as far as that's concerned. Like I have my personal theories, but they change, and like I'm sure you go through the same thing. Like I read a lot about a certain aspect of something, and then I'm like, oh, maybe that's only really on the right track, and then I'll go a little further, and I'll completely pivot off of that, and just feel like it evolves over time. Like currently,
it's like an everyday thing for me.
Yeah. Currently, my latest kind of like feeling is like I feel like there's multiple facets of it, of course, but distinctly, like I think there's a spiritual side and then a technological side that's completely unrelated. Like I feel like the technical side is what America does, and I go into that mostly because like Salvatore Pais, these guys coming out,
Mm.
and what Pais did interestingly is like he was exactly what Thomas Townsend Brown was doing. Like he's just using a different dielectric. If you read his patents, it's exactly the same, just a different like where Townsend Brown was using like wood or ceramics, Pais is using plasma. So that's the only difference. So I'm like, maybe they're really onto something here because it's been studied since the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, I think there's been progress made too. In certain regards. Do I think that they have mastered these craft? No. But interestingly enough, over the last week, there was a quote that really grabbed my attention from Representative Eric Burleson, and he said, and I quote, "What it appears to be is somebody has discovered something, some advanced form of propulsion or technology that may actually change all of our lives." And if you look at that, like, it appears he may have been speculating openly rather than revealing details from say a confidential briefing. But knowing his stance and then hearing that,
Right.
and then like, I'm looking at the stories that we have lined up for like the news portion of the show today. From my neck of the woods, they're trying to build a flying saucer over at Falcon Space Lab. It seems like something is brewing, and I keep finding like little stories from different parts of like the technology sector where like you'll see something about superconductors and room temperature superconductors, and then you'll see something. I shared it, and I'm surprised it didn't get more views, but they self-healing materials and metals and such, and I'm
Metals,
like,
yeah.
Roswell, it's just right. So it's like, are we now? You obviously have been doing your own personal research. You watch our show. Do you think that we're like on the precipice of an actual revelation where they just say, forget this, man, let's just tell them something? Like, are we close?
I mean, I feel like there's different factions that do and do not want. I think the factions, the control, the money factions do not, because they make a lot of money off of this stuff. But it's kind of like the genie in the bottle. It's going to come out sooner or later. And the thing is other people are making discoveries that are in line with these things. When Pais came out and did those patents, I was like, that's insane. I thought that would be at least classified top secret. But then on the flip side of that, I'm like, why isn't it classified top secret patents? Because they have a whole section for that. So it didn't make very much sense to me. But I've kind of, I don't know. In one of my phases, like I went through a CE5 phase. Like I thought it was maybe that this is all spiritual. This is all woo, so to speak. And I even did the meditation. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about today too. That was probably the most recent.
Oh, we can cover that because I recently went out and did just that too. So we'll definitely hit that for sure.
Yeah, I definitely. I did mine 2 years ago, and I'm in the middle of a big city. It's kind of like a New York kind of city. There's beautiful park, and I'm in the apartment on the side of this area. So it's very huge light pollution, huge. You can't see any stars really at night.
Oh yeah. No.
So
not at all.
I did CE5 like 2 years ago, and I didn't think it would work. I just watched like Stephen Greer's. I was on YouTube. I think it was Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I think it was called, and I was, a lot of good information, even though Greer's a little controversial. But I was like, yeah, let's try it out. So, turn the lights off, do a 20 or 30-minute meditation with this app or whatever, and so I walk outside to the balcony, and I'm like, okay, let's see if it worked. And I look and I see one little bitty star. I thought it was a star, and I'm like going, wow, okay. So usually you can't. And it was full moon too. The moon was on the other side. So in between these two buildings, I see this one little bitty star, and it starts going like this, like super fast, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm like going, maybe, and I'm thinking it's my eyes. I'm like going, maybe I'm just like, trying to focus in because it's so tiny that I'm doing this or something with my eyes. But then I'm like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, it's weird. And I was like, do a circle. And then it starts going, boop, circle. And I'm like, do a square. And it starts doing a square.
No
And so,
way.
yeah. And I'm like, do a triangle. And it did a triangle. Then I'm like, okay. I'm like, so my girlfriend was in the house. I go in there, I grab her. I'm like, come here. Let me see if you see this. And I said, do you see, look between those two buildings. And she looks and she goes, yeah, there's something, it's moving back and forth. That's weird. I'm like going, and in my mind, I literally go, okay, figure eight. And I said, what is it doing now? And she goes, oh, figure eight. I'm like, okay. So for like 30 minutes, I'm sitting out there going, okay,
Wow.
do a number two, and it would literally do everything that I was asking it in my mind to do. I was trying to take pictures of it, but it's such a little dot. I sent them to Digby just to have them, but I'm like, look, whatever you can make out of these, you can make out, but it's really hard. And I was like zooming in 10 times and it gets all grainy in the dark and stuff. I was like, they're terrible
Yeah,
pictures.
phones are just not good for it.
It was
You're better
awful.
off using one of those, like one of those. They have those. They're modern versions at least, but even the older ones, the camcorders that have like the mechanical zoom instead of the digital zoom,
Yeah.
those tend to be a hell of a lot clearer. But then you have that witness with you, right? You have your girlfriend there,
Yep.
and she's relaying this information to you. Like I
Like
have
I'm
done
thinking it
CE5
and she's saying
like
it. It
that,
was amazing. So
right?
you have,
Like it,
yeah.
it's like, what do you like? All right, so when you're in that situation, there's got to be that part of your brain that's like, hey, nah, there's got to, come on, what is this? Like, I'm just seeing things. But then you add that second person. So,
Right.
like, was that enough confirmation for you that night?
For me, I'm like, it was. But interestingly enough, she got scared. And because I kept telling her to do different, like, do this, do that, do that. It was like a, pull toy. Say mama again. Do it, monkey, do it. And so she got scared. She goes, I don't want to, I don't like this. I don't like this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So we go back inside and I just kind of left it at that. So she went out of town to see her mom the weekend after I'd done that, and I'd done it again. And so for 30, 45 minutes at least, I mean, I'm literally just like going, okay, do this, do this. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like going, I have no idea what I'm dealing with here. Like, I'm like, what is this? And so it could be great. It could be dark. It could be, I'm like going, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I stopped doing that. And ironically, like a few nights after that, I was, and I don't know if I can't really attribute those together, but it definitely happened. Like I'm in bed, with her, my girlfriend next to me, and open my eyes, and there's something, and it would change over the course of like 6 or 7 nights. But I'm waking up screaming, like I'm like, ah, like somebody by my bed. You know, it was bizarre. And she's like, what? I'm like, she's like, did you have a nightmare? I'm like, I guess so. But the one that was the weirdest was I was like after the fourth or fifth night of that happening, um, I open my eyes, I see something, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to contain myself. This is not real. I'm probably just dreaming. And it looked like a, a grandma with no face, completely naked, pointing at me. And I literally looked away and then looked back, and it was still there. And that's when I freaked. And then it disappeared. Then it disappeared. Like I was trying to focus. I'm like going, okay, it's not real. Just hold it together. This has been happening the past 4 or 5 nights. Just look away, come back. It'll be gone. It's still there.
Oh
So
my God.
I scream again. She wakes up. She's like, look, no more of the C5 stuff. She's like, this is freaking weird. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So since then, I haven't done I haven't done that anymore.
It's
So
on the blacklist. I was, the person I was dating this girl and we lived together for 2 years, and like CE5 was just outright banned in my house because
really,
she was a very spiritual person, and I mean I'm rather spiritual myself too. I try to meditate as much as I can. I believe in the power of manifestation. I've seen it, but
hmm
she was utterly convinced that these are demons. And but it's like I can't be so judgmental. It's like I don't necessarily believe that, but her reasoning and the way she presented it was sound enough for me to at least respect it. And I'm like, okay, all right, I won't do this in the house. So I just went other places and did it instead.
but she's got a point. See, I'm actually kind of going a little bit that direction. I'm kind
Interesting.
of,
Okay.
yeah, I'm kind of like, I think there's a nuts and bolts thing that's probably a lot of US tech that we're just hiding. And I think the spiritual side of it, I kind of look back and I go, okay, for 3,000 years, they've been kind of saying the same thing, good and evil, good and evil. And one thing I was reading the other night, I was reading Mac Tony's on his cryptoterrestrials, or I think it's called, yeah, it's cryptoterrestrial
Mm,
book.
Yeah, I believe so. I
And he was
have it.
talking,
Pretty sure.
and I read it, and I'm rereading. It's the second time I'm reading. So he was talking about something that I thought was really interesting that I don't know why I've never thought of before. But he was like, why? He goes, you look at the ones from like the 1890s, the viewings and the sightings, and they're digging, soil samples and plant samples. He goes, in this like it looks like a pirate ship that's floating in the air. It's got an anchor coming down. He goes, it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah,
It's ridiculous. He goes, it's
it
completely
is.
absurd. And he goes, like, why are they taking samples? He goes, it's almost like they need an audience. So I was like, wow, I never really thought about that. Like they want the audience to help them manifest. And with a lot of the stuff what you're talking about with like the quantum manifesting, it makes perfect sense. And so then I started
It really does.
I started putting things together like, well, maybe they are good and evil, just like they're talking about through Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, whatever. Maybe they are angels and demons, but whoever gets the most attention is the one that kind of has the easiest ability to manifest in this reality. I'm like, maybe that's a real thing.
Mm, that might be it. The way I look at it too is that these are forces that have been around for maybe forever, right? Maybe before
Yeah,
time was time and space was space, and that different religions, different cultures, and parts of the world, they all have different names for these things. But it's just that when you start digging into the nitty gritty and looking at the behavior and characteristics of these entities, that's when the names just drop and you just see those similarities across the board. There's a book that I've read it almost all the way through by Nick Redfern. And I was using it for research for this particular video that I'm working on right now, but it really does dig deep into this, idea that, maybe what we're dealing with shouldn't be messed with. Because, I want to look at all the data. I want to, I want to intake everything I can. It's called Final Events, Demonic UFOs, Alien Abductions, the Government, and the Afterlives. Nick Redfern. It's really, really interesting. I would highly recommend it, especially, if that's like an area you're finding interesting lately. But I will say that, like you mentioned the airships, but then, I was just talking about this the other day. You fast forward through time a little bit, and all of a sudden, these airships are now these sort of like retro-y, what we would now call, sort of retro looking flying saucers. Like they're kind of rounded and almost comical looking in a way, almost silly. And then you go down and now you're getting into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now you're starting to see triangles and all these other weird
Close Encounters of the
shapes.
Third Kind movie. Yeah, all these
Right.
lights.
And now
Yeah,
what do we have? Now what do we have, right? It's a lot of
right.
like balls of light and spheres and things. And
hmm
I thought, perhaps, maybe they're just trying to inspire us in some way. They're trying to nudge us in a certain direction. And what they do is they display like the best next step, like aesthetically. And then that kind of like creates like a whirlpool in certain people's imaginations, and it gets the wheels turning. And I'm like, well, if they're doing that, perhaps maybe that's why that we are seemingly on a crash course with creating sentient AI. Because it's like, how useful would it be to have a civilization like us with that type of system already in place that they could utilize to their own means? I don't know. They might be indifferent. But I also think, based on my own research, and I don't know if you agree with me on this one, but like you said, there's different factions of humans that are working to different ends. But I feel like that is also true for the NHI, that there are different factions of NHI that have different agendas. And, it might be true. There are some that could be like love and light, and they're here to,
Yeah.
bring us to the next level of ascended consciousness, a very new age idea. But then there's these other ones that they're creating hybrids, and then there's other ones that just don't care, and that they're just around and they look at us like we would a squirrel on a tree. I have no idea. What do you
Right.
think is going on? Do you think we're being visited by more than one intelligence, because I don't want to say species. I don't want to say I want
Yeah.
to, but I don't want to. But yeah, I'm sure you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do think there's got to be more than one, just from the sheer number and the different reports. Like they're so everything's completely different. Recently, I was watching a video with Chris Bledsoe, and he's of course
Yes.
seeing a glowing lady of light, and uh, he's not calling it too religiously. Like I don't think he's saying like it's the Virgin Mary, like they did in Fatima or anything like that. But
No. Yeah.
he's seeing something, that's so the manifestations are so different and they're so weird. Um, then you got on the other side like Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, like what is going on there? Like, are these really skinwalkers? Are they, So I don't know. And then the way the science kind of blends in with it, like uh, like a Skinwalker, one thing I thought was interesting is that they constantly have this gamma spike of radiation every time they see something, and then they're ironically they're looking in infrared, and I'm like going, okay, gamma's way on the ultraviolet side, so why not get an ultraviolet camera and just see what the So I feel like, and I know it's harder to filter ultraviolet, but you can. And a good camera will see ultraviolet just like infrared. But I have a feeling that if you did an ultraviolet camera on there, you'd probably see tons of stuff around there. And
I have seen people utilize both ends of the spectrum on different cameras and pick up all sorts of weird stuff. You got to figure
yeah,
we're born with our five senses and our brains. And again, this is going along the lines of my own theories and what I lean towards, but I feel like consciousness actually comes from somewhere outside of like regular three-dimensional time and space, and we pick it up like a radio. But what the brain does biologically is that it filters it to make the information that we're receiving on a daily basis suitable. Otherwise, it would be like a sensory overload for this particular
for sure.
bodysuit.
Yep.
So I feel that it's almost to be expected that you would see something in these different bands that we're not seeing with our eyes. But
No
then you
question.
have to, but then it's like, well, if they're intelligent and they can materialize in a physical sense, what are they made out of? And then but then it's like you think the universe apparently, despite all of what we see, all the planets, the stars, the moons, everything, the nebulas, it's all just so tremendous. But apparently the universe is like 95% this dark matter or dark energy. And right there, that tells me that we don't know shit about
Yeah.
any of this around us at all.
Right. That's one of the things Dr. Lavalette talks about in his book. He has a whole theory called subquantum kinetics. Now, it's very controversial. Most uh, physics professors, they won't even look at it. Like they won't even give it the time of day. But his math is pretty sound, and he basically goes through the theory that there's an ether, which would kind of tie in with the dark matter, theory. So he's basically explaining it. He's the exact same thing, just different ways of explaining different terminology and vocabulary. And he talks about the subquantum stuff. But one of the things I saw recently too is somebody was talking about the neurons. They were examining neurons under electron microscopes, and they're finding nanotubes, and they're calling them quantum nanotubes. So your brain is basically trillions of neurons that are literally quantum nanotubes that are receptors for the quantum, phenomena, however you want to view it. So if you think of these creatures or whatever you want to call them, if they're living in a different dimensional plane, they can coexist here with us. We could be swimming with literally like we're in an ocean of just life literally all around us, and we just can't see it and sense it because we're filtered from it. And maybe they can see us, or maybe the more we think about them, the easier they can manifest into this reality. That's what kind of leads me to believe maybe like I'm on this current kick is I'm looking at it from a purely not really Christian, but from a religious standpoint. Maybe they're right. Maybe we're reinventing the wheel here, and they've been knowing this for 3,000 years or however long religion has been around. You know, like they're like, okay, these
It's
are good and
possible,
these are
right?
evil. Yeah, and they had it all figured out, and because they saw these things, or maybe I don't know how, or maybe they were doing drugs, or who knows. But I was like, maybe Occam's razor, maybe the simplest explanation is right. Maybe there's a technical component to it that we already have studied. We've got some stuff from it, and we're trying to learn from it. And maybe there's the other side of it, a spiritual side, where the more they get you to believe in them, the more easier it is to manifest in this world.
Well,
One
that's
thing,
not the
one
first
thing
time I've
Greer
heard
said,
that either.
yeah, and I think there's one thing Greer says a lot of crazy stuff, but there's one thing he said that the Prince of Liechtenstein had quoted when he was talking about some of these things. He said, "The quicker we'll have the second coming of Christ if we can have these things." And I'm not religious at all, so don't pin that on me. But I'm like going, wow, these are really weird like synchronicities I'm seeing all over the place now. But it could change in a week, so I really don't know. you know,
That's how this
it's
whole thing works. It's so crazy. It's
yeah,
so crazy. But
and
you really nailed it when you said that, the more we think about them. I'm actually looking for it. I thought I shared it on my Twitter. It's in my images on my computer somewhere, but there was a quote from someone recently that I saw that was along those exact lines. And the girl that I used to live with said that disclosure was an awful idea. And I'm like, well, why is that? Why can't we just, know what's going on? And she was like, I believe that if everyone on Earth gets shifted into that mindset of they're here and then they believe it, it opens up a doorway. And I'm like, well, again, I don't know. But again, we also don't necessarily have all of the rules in the playbook for reality and the universe. We're still trying to figure out where the hell we came from. Like,
right.
there are so many missing links, for lack of a better term. Like, I always figured that the reason we never found that direct missing link between human beings and primates is because it's not on Earth. I mean, I genuinely lean in the direction, from a biological standpoint at least, that we were tinkered with by
Maybe Sitchin had it
someone.
right. Yeah, maybe Zachariah
I
Sitchin had it spot on.
Yeah, Eric von Däniken, all those
Mhm.
guys, brilliant minds. And again, maybe they were wrong. I don't know, but it just seems really plausible when you find out just how much of our DNA, is this junk DNA, and there's a lot to it. There's like, we get sunburn, the back pain. Digby and I were talking about this on the last episode, where it's like it's almost as if we were shipped here, it's in a weird way.
Yeah, and there's
But
still creatures that we have that have no point of like octopi. They don't. They're like octopuses are from another planet because they're so different than anything else, and there's not like a common thread with them. It's really strange. So
right,
there are animals that exist that are just completely off the charts.
but
Welcome back,
another
Digby.
one that comes to mind is my friend that's listening in kind of threw into the mix here. Dolphins are they stick out in a weird way too. They're
Yeah.
so incredibly intelligent, and they seem to really get what humans are doing, like when we're interacting with them. And it looks like, potentially, for the time being, that Mr. Digby is here. Digby, for the time that you're here, man, I want to shift it over to you. Paul has been just a kick-ass guy to talk to so far, man. Like, honestly, your stuff, Paul. You know your stuff, man. Like, such an interesting conversation so far, but because Digby has been struggling to try to connect to the web for the last 25 minutes, I can feel the depression coming from you, Digby. By all means, man, shoot your shot.
And I have no idea where to pick up from, because I've just been spending the last half an hour trying to get back online, and now I've come.
Looks like you're moving to Germany next week, huh?
Yeah.
Come to Albania, buddy. Come into the fold, my friend.
Literally, I said to Tom just before the show started, because there's weather warnings here for tomorrow, and I said, I can hear the wind start picking up, so hopefully the show will be all right. But as soon as we started, as soon as Paul came on, my internet went down, and it's come back up now. As you can see, I'm now on my iPhone, So I'm holding my phone up as steady as I can for you all. But Paul, I'm so gutted. I missed all the interview, so I'm going to have to go back.
You could watch on the episode, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's right. Well, here, Digby, I'll help you at least kind of pick up where we were. We were just talking about, you know, there's certain organisms on our planet that seem so alien, even though they're a part of our ecosystem, like, you know, the octopus, the dolphin.
Yeah.
And I was saying that I really do feel that human beings, we haven't found a missing link per se, like an exact missing link between primates and humans, because it doesn't exist on Earth, because we were tinkered with. That's kind of where we're at in the conversation.
Well, we're also the only inhabitants of this planet that aren't really supposed to be here. We're the only ones that are affected by sunburn. We're the only ones that aren't able to fend for ourselves out in the wild. We're the only ones.
Claws.
Well, yes.
That's true too.
Here that suggests that we weren't supposed to be here, or that we've been put here along the way, because we don't have the natural defenses that every other animal has to live on this planet without the existence of technology or shelter in the way that we seek it. And it's an interesting one, to be sure. And also our young don't have the ability to walk for the first year. You know, if we were out trying to survive in the wild without the means that we have available to us today, our young we wouldn't survive.
Yeah, to be honest, like Zecharia Sitchin's whole theory on that, it makes more sense than evolution, in my opinion. Like, and everybody blasts Sitchin saying he was crazy and stuff, but that makes more sense to me, since they haven't found a missing link that explains so much more. That explains, like, you know, B negative blood, explains blue eyes, explains a lot of things that are just don't really happen. Like the percentage of blue eyes, even there's only, I think, 15% of the population that have it. It should be like less than 1% if it's just a genetic mutation. It should be very small, but it's really odd. Like it doesn't explain a lot. Tom was talking about the junk DNA. That was something my dad he was a pathologist. He studied blood and he studied diseases and stuff. So junk DNA was one of his pet projects. Like, he was always so curious about what this did. Like, it just didn't make any sense to have so much of it. Like, what's used in creating you is just a very tiny percentage of what's actually needed, you know. And then there's this pile of information that's there and data that's there that's just not it's just not known what it's for. Maybe that's part of the connector tubes that get us to the quantum world or whatever. But I know Gary Nolan's got a lot to say about that.
Oh yeah, Gary is one of my favorite people, and
he's great.
I'm sure you've heard of, since you're talking about these tubes in the brain. I remember hearing as far back as like 2015, I want to say, maybe 2016, that there were some theories developing. Not that consciousness was being generated in the brain, but that consciousness was being picked up by them. They were, maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's just a different word. But they were calling them microtubules. Maybe. But,
yeah, that's the same thing.
Okay, exactly. Cool. Yeah, that's basically they're essentially just these, obviously, like, extremely tiny little receptors. Like, I have a video that I found on Twitter the other day that was, I guess, taken under an electron microscope of a neuron making connections. And if you just sit and just watch that and realize that is just happening, like, in nature.
And there's trillions of them in your mind, like, right now. It blows me away.
It's breathtaking. It's breathtaking.
It is.
It is literally, it's like, how does that thing know? I mean, just to break it down for the layman, you know, in layman's terms, how does that little thing right there know to do that? How is it able to do that? It's universe.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Is hard to fathom. Like,
oh god, yeah.
And that's why, to me, there are so many different, very weird, very woo, very fringe ideas that remain on the table, because we're missing so much information to come to conclusions about almost anything. Like, I get it, the sky is blue, But that's because we call it blue. Like there's so much that we have yet to learn, and the more we go along, the more science seems to be telling us that there's a lot going on around us that we're just not built to see. And that's it's like, are we going to develop technologies that are going to allow us to do that? Have the NHI already done that? Is that how they get here? I'm at the point where I believe some of these beings like come from the same place that your dreams do. Like, I mean, it makes more sense to me.
Well, the Aborigines thought that the dream world was just as important as the waking world. And it's interesting that you use the sky being blue, because ancient times they didn't see blue. It was just, there was just existed colors. And over time, they've proven evolutionary wise, back probably even just 2,000 years ago, they had maybe 6 colors that they identified like visually. We've expanded that to, you know, millions of colors we have on our computer screens, but like even within our mind, like if you go to a paint store, there's hundreds of them up there.
Right.
And we've defined the shades of them, but also we've also have the visual acuity to tell the difference. If you notice, like women have a better visual acuity to see. I can hold 2 like nail polish colors up. I can't see the difference, but my girlfriend can. You know,
right. Yeah, I've noticed that. You're
it's-
absolutely right.
there's like a visual adaptation that's continuing along on this evolutionary path. So as we get further along, maybe we'll be able to see more ultraviolet. Maybe we'll see more infrared. So it's weird where we're headed, but we're definitely not from here. I do 100% think that's true. And I think evolution's got a huge hole to fill, and they've never been able to fill it in the past 100 years.
Yeah, no, Paul, I completely agree. And it's definitely the stance that I take, and the fact that I don't think that we originated from here. Whether we are crossbred with something that originated here, but part of our DNA came from somewhere else, or whether we were just planted here years ago, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But it's certainly a theory that I follow. And when it comes to lights and colors and everything like that, the spectrum that we can see is just a minuscule amount of what is actually out there. So what are we not seeing? And what are we slightly out of phase of that's going on around us that we also can't see?
So much. Yeah, Tom and I were talking about that a little bit earlier, but I was talking about some of the things you see at Skinwalker, just to kind of catch up a little bit, like saying that every time they have an event, it's always a gamma radiation spike. And then they pull out these infrared cameras, which is on the completely opposite side of the spectrum. Like gamma rays are ultraviolet. So I'm like, get an ultraviolet camera. maybe you'll be able to see what's causing that spike. But I don't know. But I think we're probably in a world that's swimming in dimensionally things like we're probably like in an aquarium of just full of life all around us that lives in dimensionally around us. And what we scrape, what kind of accidentally shows up, maybe we summon them. The more we want to see them, maybe the easier it is for them to cross over and to come into this realm. Or I really don't know. It's really strange to me, but a lot of the arrows kind of point in those directions.
Like, how do you even describe that mechanism? You know what I mean? Like us thinking about them. It's like, that's so odd.
If you think about it, in your head, you have, when you were talking about the microtubes, the nanotubes they were talking about in the brain, each neuron has, I think, 5 of them across the bottom of it. And you have literally a trillion neurons in your brain. So you have this massive antenna on top of your head that's so connected to so many different things. And I think some people just actually like naturally have a tendency to be able to tap into that more. I don't think I do, but I know people like Fringe is one. I think she is, I don't know if you ever talked to her on Twitter. Fringe is amazing.
Oh, she's great. I'm going to be in a space with her after the podcast. Yep, yeah. I'm helping co-host a space with her. Yep, Fringe is great.
I love reading her stuff because she's got such an interesting take on it, and but maybe she's just more sensitive than we are. Maybe she's got a bigger what is it called, the pitumen or something like the cerebral pitumen. Caudate pitumen, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the caudate. Yeah, I think that's how you say it. And just so people are aware, if each one of these 1 trillion neurons has 5 of these quantum nanotubes, the amount of those tubes would be a number called 5E plus 12. Like we're not even using aliens anymore. We're now just using letters.
Yeah.
That
So
is
you literally have
extraordinary.
the most complex antenna ever created in your end, right? I mean, and there's 8 billion of us, so it's phenomenal.
I think when we look at the evolutionary process of mankind, I think probably one of the possibilities is that, say, we originated on another planet and that planet was dying, and at the time we didn't have the ability to reach out to the stars as far as to Earth. But say that we sent out some biologics on a ship that would eventually reach a planet and could seed that planet. Maybe that's where we came from. Maybe we are the black box of a civilization that is long fallen from another part of the galaxy. And maybe that's why NHI is so interested in us now and almost see us as fallen brethren from a star system or a galaxy that's long gone. Who knows? There's so many potential.
It's very possible. Yeah. Like Sitchin talks about, we were basically made as a slave race. Like there were people from another planet here. They got tired of doing the work, and they created us from the local hominid species that were here.
Mhm.
And then you got people like Tom DeLonge come, and he kind of says the same thing. He didn't go as far back, but he basically says, "Oh yeah, they were here, and the people mistook them as gods, and they never left." And the Greek gods were basically aliens. But it kind of ties into the same thing. Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of broke up a little bit. What was that?
Sorry, the Anunnaki.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
I
it's
mean,
funny,
to me,
you see those different cultures have those different similarities with it's always like you'll find like a council of beings and it's always like the same number. It's always like 12 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And each one of them has a
they're
different
all
name,
identical.
but their characteristics are the same, but you find them like there's all these weird similarities between, Greece and then like ancient Mesopotamia and then Mesoamerica. Like it's like they went on, a global tour of some kind,
And
like
they were
planting
they were
humanity.
fighting and arguing too. That was one of the things that Sitchin kind of touched on in his later books, like. Because basically the dynamic was you had Enki and Enlil, and
Yeah.
Enki, they were brothers, and Enki was the older brother, but he was not from the official wife of the king Anu. So
Anu, yeah.
Enlil was next in line, but Enki was actually the one that was firstborn. So there was a huge fight between them. So Enki's son Marduk went to Egypt. This is all according to Sitchin now. I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but they were kind of divided up the world. Said, okay, you're ruling over this, you're ruling over this. They gave Enki's son, which is named Marduk, which is part of my handle, gave him Egypt, and then he became Ra. And Sitchin kind of outlines a lot of this stuff, like saying this god became this god. Then he became Amun Ra because after he started a war, they banished Marduk from Egypt. Amun means gone. The form, like the missing Ra, so they became Amun Ra. Amun Ra. He's no longer here. Sitchin says he went to Mesoamerica as Viracocha and as Quetzalcoatl, and then formed a lot of those, civilizations there. Came back, retook over. They had a big war and all these things. But according to like Tom DeLonge saying, that war is still going on. They're still fighting for control with families and brothers, and it's just kind of
bloodlines and whatnot. And
exactly.
if you think about it too, so Lucifer and Satan, that's the serpent, gave Eve the apple.
Symbol was Enki's symbol was the serpent. The caduceus staff is from Enki.
Enki, or so like Lucifer and Satan, there's some debate there, but we'll go with Satan, right? Satan is the serpent that gave Eve and Adam and Eve the apple of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. And then you have Enki, right? Enki is from Sumerian mythology and is said to have created humanity and gave them knowledge. And then you move over again, Prometheus, Greek.
Yeah, exactly.
Stole fire from Zeus and gave it to humans, and all of them were punished by a higher being for giving humans knowledge of some kind.
What was the first person that had knowledge? Now, knowledge in biblical sense meant that you were able to procreate, like sex. like carnal knowledge. That's where that. So when they ate from the tree of knowledge, they were the first breed of humans that were able to reproduce on their own. Before it was like a donkey or a mule. I'm sorry, that they couldn't reproduce because they were, hybrid mules basically, just like they do today. A mule can't reproduce. You can only have a horse and a donkey. Have a mule. Mule can never go forward. The name of the person that created that was the first person that could reproduce or had
Adamu?
knowledge. Adamu. Adam.
Right. Yeah, Adamu. Yeah, and right there, the language.
It's like, wow.
Travels all around the world. Egyptian mythology. Thoth. Said to have given the gift of writing and knowledge to humans, and then he was punished by the god Ra for revealing too much to humans. Like, it's
awesome.
It's right there, like it's right in front of you, and why anybody poo-poos it is strange to me. Like, if you want to say, "Oh, I'm not sure about this," we got to dig deeper. Cool, but like, I think there's way too much here for it to be discounted.
That's what I'm saying, and it's carried over generations. Like, it's carried on through every religion that permeates the entire world. So, like, that's kind of what I was telling you earlier. It's like, maybe they're right. Maybe maybe Occam's razor. Maybe it's that simple, and we're just like really overthinking everything, and we're really like just tearing it all apart. And even within the UFO community, geez, man, these guys are fighting all the time, and I'm like,
it's like it's simple. We're being visited here, and that's that. Like, I'm past that stage, though, man. I'm past the stage of our, debating whether or not they're here. Like, I that's been gone for years. After, when you have this giant triangle over your head as a child, like, could it have been reverse engineered, or could it have been just secret black tech? Sure, but there was a feeling associated with that experience that I can't quite put into words, that was silently saying that isn't human. Like, it was just there. Like, it's like when you see a sunset, oh, it's beautiful. Like, it's an intangible, and that existed during my experience, to the point that I don't think I really need anyone to tell me what it is. I think I already know, just like inherently, and I don't know how to explain that, but that is how I feel. And that leads me to this question for you. What kind of experiences have you had in your life with the phenomenon?
Well, the CE5 was probably the most striking, like that. I was like, okay, maybe this is a lot more woo than I thought it was. When I was a little kid, there was one that was weird, and I still toss it around as something that I'm not quite sure was what I think it was. But when I talk to my friends, like, still to this day, when we talk about it, it still comes up. It's like, yeah, that was something weird. So we were riding our bikes around. We called it the trail pond. So they had a road, like old rock road, and then they had a trail going off on the side, and there was a pond. It was pretty big. And we had ridden our bikes around it so much that we had made a racetrack out of it. And we went there almost every day. So we're riding our bikes around the track, and we're racing. Of course, so we're all kind of neck and neck. I see out of the corner of my eye, it's like a camera flash. Like, it just went like a bright, just like a camera, like an old-fashioned camera, not even like the new cameras. It was just really bright, boom. And then we all three stop at the same time. And we're like, oh man, that was weird. Yeah. Maybe the sun glinted off something. We kind of wrote it off. But it was weird that we all stopped, because everybody saw it, is what it came down to. So a little further down the trail, there was the haunted house, and we'd always talked about, the haunted house. So we decided, hey, you know what? Let's go to the haunted house, like right then and there, just randomly. So we go to this old house, and there's just stuff everywhere. It's a mess. There's no windows or doors in the place, so you can just walk right in, and it's just a frame of a house. There's furniture still in there. There was literally checks, like bank checks, all over the floors. They cover the entire floor of every room in the building. So we're digging through the checks, like, oh my God, this one's for $10. We found one for $2,000. We're like, oh my God, $2,000. And we all crowding around. Yeah, we're like, oh, that's more money than we can. Yeah, you realize how many Atari games we could buy with this? It'd be amazing. So we were looking at that, and we were kind of hunched over on the ground, like, and then I look up, and there's a hole in the ceiling where the attic was, but there's no door on it, and there's these two red eyes that are looking down at me. I scream my head off. My friend looks up, goes, what? And he looks up and screams. He goes, let's get out of here. And so we start just falling over each other, just getting out of the building. And we're like riding our bikes away. And we're like, oh my God, we're never going back there again. Now, What we saw, I have no clue. Now, my first friend was saying, he goes, man, maybe it's just a raccoon, it was because it was daylight, so the lights were in, the sunlight was in there. There was no power in there or anything. Uh, but I don't know if daylight reflects light off of animal eyes like that. You know what I mean? I've never seen that before. I've seen it at night when you take a flashlight, but I've never seen in daylight having eyes were flashing at me. But then they were red. That was the other problem, and they were
Well, was
far
it giving
apart.
off light, seemingly?
No, just all you could see was everything was black. All you could see was the eyes. Like you could see two red eyes that are about as far apart as mine, like on a face. So I'm thinking if it's a rat or a raccoon, they'd be close together. I don't know. So maybe the whole thing's like in our mind, like, but it was three kids, like we're 11, 12 years old that saw that. And we still talk about it too. Like when I talk to them, like, hey, remember that time in the haunted house? Oh yeah, man, we crapped ourselves trying to get out of there. So I know it's validated by them, but what we saw, I have no idea. It could be a complete, nothing burger, but that's really the kind of the launch pad for me really getting into supernatural studies, looking at everything I can on the UFO subject and everything in between. So that
Yeah,
was
you seem to really know your stuff, man. You really do. I'm really impressed.
I appreciate that.
You come off like someone that has already like written a book about this. Like it's
I wish.
like honestly,
one day maybe. Yeah.
I want to do that too, man. I really do.
Well, let's collaborate, man. We'll put a book
together. I'm down.
Digby's
Digby's down to collaborate too, right, Digby?
Yeah, sorry, I've been unusually quiet this evening because I'm coming in on the back end of the conversation, so it feels sort of out of my comfort zone. But
it's just been like an all-encompassing situation. We're just kind of talking about we covered like some of his personal past and some of the work that he used to do for an alphabet agency and such, and then we've obviously moved into UFOs and everything, but I'm curious, Paul, because when you do this type of research, right, it begins to kind of pull at the fabric of a lot of other subjects. Like the phenomenon is a big umbrella with like a lot of different topics underneath it. So I'm going to ask you a very heavy question, very heavy. And I've been wanting, I want to ask this of almost every guest, but sometimes I just don't find the time for it. But sometimes this gets a really interesting answer. Paul, what do you think happens when we die?
Well, my Catholic upbringing when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too.
There's a heaven or hell, But the scientific side of me, and this is due to my mother and my father. My dad was a doctor, a physician, and very scientific. He was also became later in life very religious. My mother was a saint of a woman, 100% religious. Like she was the soul, my father was the brain, and somewhere in between that they created me. So I do, to put it in the lowest common denominator, when I get scared, I still pray. I'll still say like an Our Father prayer when I get really scared. So that's kind of deeply ingrained in me, and that's my hope, is that there is something like that. But I'm not a practicing Christian. I don't go to church. I don't. It's only when it's like life or death. I'm like, just in case, let me do this real quick. So
they say there's no atheist in a foxhole, right?
Exactly.
That's right.
Now, I was reading the other day that somebody who's really brilliant on this subject and who I really identify with very well is Diana Pasulka.
Yes, I was just thinking about her earlier when we were talking before the show.
Man, she did an interview recently I watched on another channel I won't mention here, but she is exactly how I think my mom would be if she was studying the phenomena.
Really?
Because she comes from such a religious background. Like it's so deeply ingrained in her, and she looks at everything through that lens. And that's kind of a little bit a part of the why I was kind of looking at her, is because I'm, like we were talking about earlier, I'm going through this. Maybe it's just spiritual, maybe it's just like they said it was in the old days. There's good and there's evil, there's God, the devil, and this, but we're just calling them different things. But she really breaks down some of those things. She gets access to the Vatican archives. She gets access to a lot of stuff. She consults with like big companies, Raytheon, and like it's really crazy what she does. A lot of movies, the Netflix Encounters, that whole
Mhm.
show, she was the consultant on that show. So I mean, she's got a lot of experience, a lot of exposure, and I hope one day, like she uses pseudonyms for some people. Some from her first book, she's kind of released some of the people that were she had pseudonyms before. Gary Nolan was one of them, and these are all people that she hangs out with all the time. And I'm really interested to see when she comes out with like her real true thoughts because she never really gives a solid answer on that.
It's interesting.
On the flip side of what happens when you die, another theory was. Have you heard the theory of the moon collector, the moon soul collector?
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Please elaborate on that though, because
Okay.
actually, wait a second, Digby, I'm curious. If I go to our little you know what? This is the perfect time for me to hit this button.
What have I done now?
Weekly Woo.
It happened organically because this definitely falls under the category of Weekly Woo, and Paul is bringing us in on the first time we're ever doing this. Paul, why don't you tell us what in God's name you're talking about? I know, but I want to hear it from you.
So basically, there's a theory that our souls are what and they called them archons, which is kind of like a reptilian race. The archons were after our souls, which is very similar to the devil being after your soul. But basically, what they say is that there's a giant cube on the moon that when you die, your soul is released, and this cube on the moon sucks your soul up. Sounds very like Scientology, but and then shoots it back to be reborn again and again and again, so they can reuse that soul, learn from its experiences, and see how it evolves over time and whatnot. So, like a giant science project with souls.
Oh wow! You know what?
With
I've
beagles.
never heard it described like that before.
Yeah.
Like it's like, well, why are they doing that? For observational purposes. That's interesting. Just to attach that
Observational,
to that.
and I've also heard that they feed off of some of the energies that the soul produces. Now,
that's what
from the scientific standpoint, like I love the fact that you ever read 21 grams. Basically, it's like when the person dies, 21 grams are missing from them, and they think that's when the soul leaves. Is the soul corporeal, or is it just a figment of our imagination? I have no idea. My internal sense, because we have an identity and not just a clump of cells, I feel like it's real. So, because
Yeah,
otherwise,
yeah.
like I'm just a pile of cells. I have bacteria in my gut. I'm really a symbiotic creature of skin suit. Now, what my identity is, and what the reason I can look at Digby and Tom and say you're different from me in certain ways. Hair color, I'm all gray and everything, and what the reason you're so different and have that identity lends me to believe that their soul is real.
There's an essence.
Yeah, and
There's
that
an essence.
that you can have the mentality to contemplate itself. That's one of the biggest defining factors of a soul. The fact that
True
you're able to
sentience.
think of yourself. Yeah.
Right. It's like the self can think of the self. And my mom and my dad told me that when my mom's father passed away, that they both saw, and this is how they described it, they saw the life from him like come up. And it was like she was like, I saw like his essence leaving him. But what they also said they saw was that once it got up here, she said that like up here, like over his bed, looked like a road, like a mirage you'll see on the road on like a really hot day.
Like it was
Both my parents
wavy?
saw this. Yes,
Wow.
both my parents saw like a distortion above my grandfather when he passed away. And he's interestingly enough was a very very religious, spiritual individual. Lives like a really he lives close to God. You know what I mean? He was very Catholic, but he was just an amazing guy. I wish he was still around to I would have brought him on the show. He's just such a great guy. But yeah, they saw that. They saw something that they both described as being hard to quantify, but it was visual. So I you know what? You know why I believe in souls? Because I am one, right? And it's like, well, what does that even mean? I feel like I I know it's like it's a part of myself that maybe in this life or what have you, like I don't get to know it as well as I'd like to because it takes time, maybe, you know, reincarnation and such. But there is this aspect of all of us that we can all feel, whether you want to call it a soul, whatever you want to call it, chi. There's something in human beings that brings us to life. And if you realize how much energy and electricity is flowing through your body, and you just go back to science class, I'm sure a million times everyone here watching the show has heard this. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be altered, right? Like we've all heard that. So it's like I always, from a very young age, said, well, if that's the case, and we have electricity running through our bodies, literally, that's how I move my fingers. There are signals being sent from my brain to these limbs. Well, then where does that energy go when I die? It doesn't just, you know, it transforms. So that's why I believe death is a transformation.
I saw something interesting, and that was if you measure the amount of voltage within a single cell, and then you times that by the amount of cells there are in your body, the human body actually has more electricity and more potential power running through it than a nuclear explosion. It's just we don't actually have the ability to tap into that energy. That's insane.
If that's true, that's like a beautiful fact of life. That's stunning, actually.
And I wish that I could quote where I saw it, but I either watched it on a documentary or read it somewhere, but I remember it. And it was that basically if you add up the energy created or stored within a single cell and then times that by the number of cells in the human body, we're basically walking potential nuclear explosions if anybody ever had it.
Don't make me mad.
Taco Bell, yeah. I've eaten Taco Bell and felt that way a few times.
Well, you know what, Paul, since you're here with us, and we've taken up a very large chunk of time with you, do you want to stick around with us and go over some of the news that we had planned, or
Sure,
are you busy?
yeah, go for it. No, go for it, man. I got all night.
Sweet. All right, because so I'm gonna be, like I said, you mentioned Fringe. I believe that space is at like, I want to say 7, but one space said 9:30. I don't know. Wait, there scheduling conflict. Blah blah blah. Oh,
I love how.
So I guess she's figuring. She said, "Crap! I didn't realize there was a scheduling conflict with spaces. I apologize." All right, so here we're doing this in real time. So which time? 9:30 or 7? Shout out to Fringe. I'll tell her this quick. She'll probably appreciate it.
I love the fact that you can ask her anything and she'll be more than happy just to share whatever.
She's just such a nice person, and you know when she messaged me, she was so sweet. She was just like, "I'm looking for a co-host. I need somebody mature that's going to take this seriously." And I was like, "Moi? Yeah." I was like, "Well, thank you." Jeez, I was like, "Thanks." I don't know, man. There's some really nice people on here. Seriously, just to make me feel so good. Like, and I try to return the favor. So let's go. Let's hit the little button here, and we're gonna go into our news segment. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Beyond the mundane.
Digby has no idea what we're talking about, so I'll handle this, right, Digby?
I'm completely out of my comfort zone this week. It's a horrible feeling.
So I guess I'll just do like a Reader's Digest version of like what I have here, because there's like, I have a ton of stuff here. So there was a podcast that was uploaded the other day. It's called Redacted with Clayton Morris, and I believe he used to be with Fox News. And apparently a Pentagon insider whistleblower has come forward to reveal that the U.S. has alien crafts, referred to as off-world vehicles, that have been reverse engineered for many years. And they allege that the U.S. has retrieved non-human origin technical vehicles, essentially spacecraft from another species. Now, there is some skepticism about the legitimacy of these claims, questioning if it's a psychological operation or if this information has been known for years. The guest is a gentleman named Joshua Reed. He's from the Red Pill Project. He's been researching the topic and the whistleblower's legitimacy. He mentioned that his background is in the U.S. Navy, and his experiences with unidentified phenomenon are also brought up. He discussed the involvement of Inspector General McCullough, who represented the whistleblower and has a history of classified programs. Reed suggests that there might be more whistleblowers with first-hand information and evidence, including video and photographic proof, and really interestingly, one of the whistleblowers was involved in the 1990s Virginia incident in Brazil, where alien bodies allegedly and a craft were recovered. So I had listened to the podcast while I was at work the other day. So apparently there was some sort of classified meeting that occurred, and there was footage shown of officers from an, I don't know which intelligence agency, literally in the flesh communicating with non-human intelligence, and they did very specifically refer to it as an extraterrestrial being. And apparently there's video evidence of this, there's photographic evidence of this, like solid evidence. And during this meeting, before the evidence was shown, some of the representatives present were quite skeptical, and that by the time they were done showing the evidence, that some of them were shaky, like they couldn't even hold a glass of water. Someone had to step out for air. What do you guys make of all these claims? It seems like the more and more David Grush-like information seems to be popping up. And I've been saying this for weeks. I've been saying it, that the next big domino to drop is going to be a first-hand witness, and that's exactly what this is.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know we've got at least 30 potential whistleblowers waiting in the wings to come out. And it's the waiting game at the moment to see what quality these whistleblowers are, whether they have strong credentials, whether they don't have an awful lot of skeletons in their closet that are then going to discredit them further on down the line. And we're in a bit of a waiting game at the moment, and it's horrible. But I do believe that there is an awful lot still to come. And almost like David Grush was sent out to sort of test the waters on behalf of other whistleblowers. You know, it's like a warm-up act at a gig. You know, he's the first guy to come out. And we're now waiting for these first-hand witnesses to come forward. But what's really frustrating is that if they don't change things in Congress and don't change things in the sense that they're allowed to talk about classified information, and we can't get these people into SCIFs and then the information be able to come out from the SCIFs, then what are we really going to hear from these people? There is still a bottleneck here. And that we can have as many whistleblowers that come forward as possible, but they'll have to still go through the ICG or whatever it's called to get authorization to talk about what they're allowed to talk about. And then there will always be situations where they go, well, I can't talk about that unless it's in a SCIF. And then you get them in a SCIF, and people like Tim Burchett and Marco Rubio and Luna and all these people get to hear the information, which is great, but then they don't get to do anything with it. This is the problem. This is what we have to overcome. And I don't, at the moment, fully understand how that's going to change, unless there is a whistleblower out there who comes forward, gives his information, and gets seen credibly within the community, and then gets frustrated and goes, do you know what? I've got nothing to lose. I may as well now say everything. And say
I was hoping that would be Lou Elizondo at first, like the first domino to fall. But
I don't know if Lou's any different than the David Grush. I don't know if Lou's got first-hand experience and evidence to show, or if he's another Grush.
Maybe.
Well, I've heard it, like, I believe he's at least alluded to having experiences, but whether that was while he was on duty or just in his personal life, you know, remains to be seen. I don't believe he was part of any legacy programs, and I don't think he had any firsthand knowledge, you know, with the reverse engineering. But again, I'm not really sure. He's never really been clear about that, and maybe his new book that's coming out will shed some light on that. But I guess I'll say this about this whole situation. that this is one of the single most important facets of this entire disclosure conversation. Firsthand witnesses. This is big time, because if they actually have solid evidence to present, then, I mean, then it's like, well, what next? That's the real question. We enter a new phase of extreme unpredictability, and I would also imagine, based on just a lot of what's being said about these particular individuals that are like waiting behind the disclosure door, that they're scared. They're scared to come out with some of this. They really are in fear for their lives. You would have to think that there is still an active campaign being perpetrated against individuals like this by God knows who, and that they feel threatened. I mean, look what happened when Grush came out as a second-hand witness. They went right for his medical records and tried to make him look like he was a loony with no credibility.
All that they could get. Now, imagine you're an individual who's done something in their past that they're not particularly happy about, or
who hasn't?
Right.
Anything like that. Who hasn't had something in their past that they don't want to have?
We all do. We all do.
Person that didn't have something that somebody could dig up on them if they really wanted to, that wouldn't embarrass them in front of the world.
And it's also true too. Like, what if they've been, maybe outspoken against some of the choices that the military has made? What if they've spoken out against our, war over in the Middle East? Those types of things, not to get political, but, there's strong feelings there. Just like with Vietnam and everything, people came home from being in Vietnam and were singing quite a different tune than when they left. So it's like, Mr. Big Military may not be a fan of that type of thing, and therefore they're going to try to make your life a living hell, especially if you're going to try to start discussing with the public the most guarded secret in the history of secrecy, right?
And there's a lot of evidence. I mean, when you got Kirkpatrick basically, like publicly stonewalling people, and then he, announcing he's got a council of people that control all this and tell him what he can and can't put out. It's like, man, it's insane.
It's like, tell us there's a cover up louder, please. I didn't hear you the first time. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's blatant.
So, moving on from that story, this one comes from my neck of the woods. I had to include it in this episode because, well, it happened in New Jersey, and it's kind of interesting. The FBI paid a visit to the Falcon Space Lab in Hawthorne, New Jersey, after receiving a tip about the potential use of enriched uranium at the facility, where scientists are working on building a flying saucer. Mark Sokol, the 35-year-old founder of Falcon Space, was taken aback when two agents arrived. The senior agent disclosed they were assigned to investigate unidentified anomalous phenomena, the official term that is now being used for UFOs at this point. Call it whatever you'd like. Drawing parallels to Fox Mulder from the X-Files. Although no dangerous uranium was discovered, the agents expressed curiosity about the lab's experiments. Sokol's team is exploring nuclear physics to achieve object weightlessness, a foundational step towards a flying saucer, and their motivation stems from verified sightings of unidentified objects exhibiting peculiar flight behaviors. Now, it also says, too, Sokol's ambition is to decode the technology behind these mysterious objects, some of which are speculated to be non-human technology. CCTV footage captured the agents interviewing Sokol and using a Geiger counter outside the lab. The device found no harmful radiation levels. Some experiments at the lab are based on the theory that if subatomic particles within atoms spin in a unified direction, it could induce weightlessness. Sokol revealed that they've achieved up to 17.8% weight reduction in some tests, aiming for over 90% to create a levitating saucer. That's a mouthful, but it's like I read that and then we'll reverse piggyback all the way back to earlier when I mentioned that quote from Representative Eric Burleson, who said what it appears to be is somebody has discovered something, some advanced form of propulsion or technology that may actually change all of our lives. I had the sense over the last 2 years, roughly 2 or 3 years, that maybe there has been some kind of breakthrough in the reverse engineering process that would benefit most people of Earth, and that the only real way to get that out is to tell everybody where it came from, because they're gonna know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think that there's an awful lot of reverse engineered technology out there, and I think that we actually use quite a lot of it every single day. I mean, if you look at the evolutionary process of the technological advancements that we've seen in the last 100 years to now, and you think that we developed that quickly, faster we have, I personally believe that there's external forces at work there. We've come on leaps and bounds. I mean, look, all three of us when we were kids, I mean, we didn't even have the internet, and now here we are, talking to each other from different points around the world in real time in HD. I mean, I'm on my phone now doing it, as you can tell.
But that's incredible.
Yeah.
And God, the way that technology has developed. If you go back 200 years ago and see a horse and cart, that horse and cart is pretty much identical to the horse and cart that was around 1,000 years before it.
Great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, they never changed.
It's weird too to consider how rapid some of this advancement has taken place, and when you look at like the starting point of certain things, like the integrated circuit is like a really good example.
Fiber optics.
God, where would fiber? That's the other one I was just gonna say. You're absolutely on the money. And when you actually go digging, if you had to do like a research paper on the history of some of these technologies, there's like, and I swear to God, like you run into this like all over the place. There's these weird gaps, and they just want you to assume that during those particular gaps in time, it's like, oh yeah, it was, research, but it's like there's just so little information about those gaps. It's like, well, when I look at think of any technology that we can kind of trace the lineage of pretty easily, right? You have details along that line. Boom, boom, boom. We made this advancement. We discovered that this material behaves this way when exposed to this. But with like integrated circuits, fiber optics, and there's a few others, there's like these holes in the story. There's these just like missing chunks.
It's ironic that Nikola Tesla's research was all disappeared by the time these things come out. So you have Tesla, who made the perfect resonating tower that was putting out more power than it was taking in. Then you have Townsend Brown, who was basically building off Tesla. They were contemporaries and they knew each other. Barely anybody knows about Thomas Townsend Brown, and the guy was like, he worked on so many major projects, including some people say he was on the Philadelphia experiment. Some people were saying that he worked on the hydrogen bomb, on the atomic bomb. So he's like a massive figure in the scientific world. Nobody knows about the guy, all because he took a vacuum tube, he put it on a scale, he put a charge in the vacuum tube, and the scale went down. He's like, wow, that's weird. The more charge I put, the more weight it gets. He turned it upside down, put a charge on it, put the scale. Oh, it got lighter. How? That's crazy. Every time I put a bigger charge on it, it gets lighter and lighter. So that started the whole thing for him. And there's a whole chapter of that that's missing. People like Greer say it came from 1954 is when he perfected it. And then you got guys like, I can't remember the guy's name. The one that was the aerospace graphic artist that was talking to the guy that was at the show that saw the disc, like the three big. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Richard, I can't remember his name to save my life, but
yeah, no, it's like on the tip. I think maybe somebody in the chat will get it. Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue.
But he was he died recently, rest his soul. But like his images had the same theory as Tesla and Thomas Townsend Brown. So maybe we perfected that.
it all intersects with NHI and the phenomenon too. Like, I'll just quickly throw in, don't forget that we would not have sent men to the moon without Jack Parsons. And what was Jack Parsons doing in his spare time? Nothing serious. He was just hanging out with Aleister Crowley and experimenting with Enochian magic to bring forth entities from other dimensions. But no big deal. No big deal at all there.
Don't worry about that.
Nothing to see.
You know who else was part of those conversations with Parsons and Aleister Crowley and all that, or was heavily involved with that was Gene Roddenberry, the creator.
Yes. Yes, I've heard for years that Gene was being fed information to throw into the show. I have literally heard that so many times. Spielberg too. I've heard Spielberg's name come up in that same light as well. What's up, Nicotina? Our fellow content creator is in the chat. What's up, buddy?
Gene Roddenberry's a funny one, because actually, if you look at all the technology that you see in Star Trek, at the time when it first came out, way ahead of its time, nobody had ever thought about the things that came up on Star Trek. Yet most of it is now possible or being investigated and has scientific basis in it as well. Right from, teleportation is something that's being developed now. There's people out there studying the theories of warp field and warp bubbles and things like that. There isn't an element of Star Trek that isn't either in the works or already been developed. And that's what's crazy. And I think that's why a lot of the people are such big Trekkies as they are. I love a bit of Star Trek. I always have done. But it's not science fiction in the fact that the science that they talk about is completely made up. There's foundations in reality in it as well.
Heavily, yeah.
Makes you wonder if there's some foresight, there's some background information there. We already know that Spielberg did Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he had government agents planted there to feed him information. And one of the key characters in it was basically Jacques Villette, and there's information there, and you have to ask yourself the question: is this a way of priming humanity for what is to come? Is this a way? Do they use TV, movies, and media and science fiction to prepare us for the future and science fact?
We even use the same words like warp and things like that. It's crazy.
That's true. That's true. It's like, where do you think they got the names from? Like the EM drive and all of these things, bending space-time. It's all hand in hand. And someone made a really interesting comment in the chat earlier that I really, really, really resonate with, because it kind of goes into some of the things that I've been thinking about lately. Yeah, Serial earlier said space is as infinite as our imaginations. Everything we can imagine exists out there in some way, shape, or form. And I always had this idea, like, if consciousness is like the fabric of everything at a fundamental level, like, maybe anything that we can actually imagine, no matter what it is in some way, shape, or form possible. I don't see why not, right? Like, if you look at some of what these NHI are doing and what they're capable of, it would appear that a civilization could, at one point, get to such a precipice that they could do anything. I'm hearing all types of crazy stuff lately from the technology sector. Imagine having a 3D printer, right? It's like a 3D printing device, but you're not just printing, figurines and Gundams and Goku or whatever the hell that you decide you want to make. You're printing apples, or you're printing cell phones, and your base ingredient is hemp. This is literally being experimented with, that one of these days we could have a machine that could do that, and the base ingredient is hemp. Imagine that. A machine that can basically print anything.
Well, if you look at the building blocks of the universe, everything that we're made up of doesn't disappear; it just gets recycled, right? So there's no reason to suggest that if you had enough power and you knew how to use it, that you wouldn't be able to reform molecules and atoms to form anything you wanted from anything that you wanted. Because everything that makes us up, every single cell that makes us up, every atom that makes us up, when we die, it turns into something else. There's no wastage. It's just we become something else. We know that already. So there must be a way of taking energy and transforming it and basically creating what we would know as a food replicator or anything that can replicate anything. 3D print
so wild.
Instantly. And it's just a question of energy and understanding how to rearrange atoms.
That's it. And I know it's like, oh, that's it, but in a basic fundamental way, yeah. Like if you like, let's say we had a machine where I could scan, a lemon, and it'll basically give me the code as far as what at the most fundamental level, what it would take to create that exact lemon. How many atoms of this, how many molecules, like just all the little bits. And then you have a machine where you could just, plug that right in, and it will it will be able to take the most fundamental base ingredients and transform it into a lemon. And they're saying that hemp, because of its chemical makeup, would be primed to do things with like that. And it's just like, world hunger goes right out the window at that point.
The same as every other lemon. And how boring would it be if every ingredient you ever had tasted exactly the same as the last one?
But at that point, our understanding would be such that we would be able to probably print lemons that taste like grapes. And trust me, it's possible, because I've eaten a grapple before, and they didn't use a machine to make that. They're hella expensive, but they're super good. Apples that taste like grapes. They're real. They sell them at the store up the road here, but they're like, it's like $7 for a pack of 2. I'm just like, oh man.
So like,
but they're delicious.
Could you 3D print like an animal?
Biome, I would avoid.
Under this particular idea, I mean, I suppose, right? Like, what would be stopping you?
I guess point? if you're 3D printing a lemon, you could 3D print almost anything, like, because that's a lemon.
Right. Right, exactly.
So could you make like a unicorn or a griffin or something like that? That'd be cool.
I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Conversation, because he's determined to genetically engineer a fire-breathing dragon.
I'm ready for it. Yeah.
Oh my God! Could you imagine? Dude, that's everybody's calling. Oh my God, what do you mean? Yeah. Everybody would be down to do that. That's so cool. So, I got one more news story. Digby threw this one at me here. This is from our good friend Christopher Sharp from Liberation Times. And he says the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, acknowledges the significance of potential threats posed by unidentified anomalous phenomena and emphasizes its continuous coordination with federal intelligence and law enforcement agencies. NRC distinguishes between uncrewed aerial systems, UAS, like drones and UAP, expressing its commitment to investigating and addressing any suspicious activity over nuclear facilities. Reports of UAP near nuclear power plants have been documented, prompting collaboration between the NRC, FAA, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and other entities. Annual UAP report, in conjunction with the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, involves input from the NRC and other government agencies. National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022 mandates collaboration between AARO and NRC to record incidents of UAP or unknown origin drones over NRC-regulated sites. Recent disclosures by the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, regarding unauthorized drone activities near U.S. nuclear sites align with Freedom of Information Act requests. While challenges exist in determining the extent of cooperation with AARO, the NRC's serious consideration of UAP incidents is seen positively by advocates pushing for enhanced security measures. Concerns persist about potential threats to nuclear security from unidentified objects of unknown origin, and it remains unclear if specific countermeasures have been implemented. I mean, my God, how many different stories could we possibly bring up right now about craft near nuclear sites? And then you hear this. Like, of course there's collaboration. They know what's going on. These are our nukes. Like
Good
they
luck getting anything
know.
out of Department of Energy. You'll never get anything out of them.
No, exactly. Department of Energy, I believe, plays a very large role in this whole UFO story, much larger than we probably even know, and they're not talking.
Anybody. We're talking, I mean, let's look at the existence of NHI and UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call it. For them to even be possible, we know that there has to be a free renewable source of energy. And the world is run on energy. And as soon as you have the ability to get every bit of power that you need and draw it from subspace or 0 point energy or whatever you want to call it, or whatever turns out to be true, there's an awful lot of people that lose an awful lot of power. And as soon as power becomes free, our monetary system will completely and utterly fail all around the world, because 90% of the value of the product that you buy is because of the power that it costs to produce it. And as soon as you don't need to pay for power, money really means nothing, and it really does mean nothing. And then we automatically have to find a new way of living without the currency that has bound us all. And once you do that, you realize that everybody on the planet is equal, and the 1% do not control us, have no control over us. So when people say, oh, the Department of Energy are all over it, yeah, of course they are, because they're controlled by the people that really run the world. Because unless something big happens around the world, anybody that creates a device that creates free energy and lives to tell the tale to a number of people will not be living for much longer.
I could not agree more, my friend. You hit the nail right on the head, Digby.
Yeah, and that's actually what it's down to. It is what it all boils down to. That is the reason why NHI, alien technology, is being held from the world, because it threatens the way of life of the 1%, or it's not even the 1%, it's the Council of 300, whatever you want to call it. It's not even 1%. It is a minuscule amount of people that are actually truly in charge of this planet by birthright or whatever. And they are the evil SOBs that run this planet.
What if they are the NHI?
Well, yeah, maybe. That's another.
Ah, yeah. See, that's where I was about to go. I like that. I like speculation like that.
It is the elite. The elite isn't even the 1%. It's not the billionaires. It's the people that are beyond billionaires that we don't even hear about.
Where the money isn't so much what matters, it's their influence and their power.
Somebody put this to me the other day. Give me 1 second. Because the bankers are never the people that really have the power. Yeah, the bankers work for other people. Banks always work for other people, right? So when we look at Rothschilds and we think how much they're worth, yeah, they're just the bankers.
Yep,
they are just the bankers. They are the people with the power. And we think, oh, the people like Rothschilds and BlackRock and everything like that run the world. They don't. Those are the images. Those are the corporations. Those are the people that are put in front of us so that we have someone to hate, so that we have somebody to blame. But it's not them. And free energy is what threatens the people that control the world, that control the narrative, that create the wars, that create the distraction. Everything that is going on around our world at the moment is a distraction. And the key question is NHI, UAP, UFOs. Everybody's afraid to broach the subject, of people like you and us get labeled as quacks and weirdos and woo and whatever. But we're actually the people that are really fighting to find the real answers that will actually end up freeing our world from what is basically now modern day slavery in the way that we live.
Wow, somebody get this man a podium. My goodness.
Well, sorry, I've been quiet for an hour, so I had
That's great. No, but you really nailed it. It's like really clever, deceptive misdirection, right? Like, we're all over here watching the left hand while the right hand is over here hanging out in the jacuzzi, snorting cocaine off the asses of strippers. You know what I mean? Honestly, it's like these people are just living
Yeah, but I
this giant fantasy. It's like Wolf of Wall Street. They get to do whatever they want. No one can tell them otherwise. They get pulled over. They make one phone call. Cop has to let them go. Like, people like that really do exist. And again, I'm not using certain terminology here, like Illuminati, Freemasons. This is I call it the spider web. It's a spider web because it's like you got this little rich group here, 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 and then they branch off. And then there's these corporations that they own. But internally, it's the people at the very, very, very top of these groups. Like, whether we want to admit it or not, there really are on our planet right now really terrible people in positions of power that you've never even heard of. They've stayed very well hidden and under the surface, and they're very rich a lot of times, and in certain situations they're not always right in the head. Sociopaths, people that don't feel empathy like a normal person. So when it comes to squashing the little guy, it doesn't matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter to them if the middle class disappears or whatever. They don't give a damn about that. They just care about being rich. And we're all arguing about who the president is. It's like, dude, this is way beyond that. Like, that probably doesn't matter nearly as much as revealing some of these names. I don't know who they are, but they're there. You hear whispers about it.
No, I need to ask if he's willing to do it and to mention his name. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but already on my trip, I have met one of the most fascinating individuals I've met in a very, very long time. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He deals with the legality of taxes and how taxes are actually illegal and forced upon us. And he talks a lot about the fact that your birth certificate is actually a contract to the state, and it actually creates a false identity for you in which the government then can control you in the name of yourself. But there's so many nooks and crannies in this, and it's a really fascinating story to go down. But he also knows an awful lot about the controlling elites and everything like this, and it'd be a really interesting side episode for you and I, Tom. It's a bit off the topic that we normally do, but I do think that it connects. It's not one that I would put on YouTube just because I know that it would just be but it might be an interesting episode to do, even if we just live streamed it on Twitter and nowhere else, or
made it like a
or something like that. But it's
future like extra bonus content for like, you know, like a members only type thing.
Because he's incredibly intelligent, and he wants me to film something with him anyway.
Ironically, I know more about that than I do about UAPs.
Well,
I believe that though. I could see that. I know a lot about that, and the reason I don't talk about it so much these days is because of how divisive some of these topics have gotten, and it's to the point where it's like it's even pushed me back. But trust me, I know a lot about things where I'm like, you know, I don't know if I even want to know that. Like, I could live my life not knowing that and be happy, but there's a lot of things going on around here that are just not right. They're really bizarre, screwed up, and inhumane. You know,
I just think it would be an interesting conversation to go down. You know, he's open to the whole UFO, UAP. He was talking.
Yeah, I would love to see how he ties that into this. Definitely.
The new Kai and Enki and how you know, he was telling me stories about how Adam actually had two wives. You only hear about one of them. His first wife was created by Enki, and Eve was actually created by his brother, and that's where you actually Lucifer, and you have Jesus and all this stuff. His knowledge, I swear, he must have a photographic memory, but he sucks all this knowledge in, and he can just pull it out. But he's an incredibly interesting person to talk to, and it might be an interesting one for us to just do aside from the show. And maybe you and I just host it and just stream it on Twitter, because it is an interesting one, and it does tie in more than we realise, because when you realise the reason behind the cover-up of UAP, NHI, UFO, whatever you want to call them. You know, this is at the heart of it. And you know, all I can do is speak for myself, but I do the podcast because, firstly, Tom, I love spending time with you, but I also I'm here because I want to get to the truth. And a lot of people in this subject are here because they want to get to the truth. And if we have the opportunity to speak to somebody that can give people a different perspective and things like that, then I think it's worth an hour.
I agree. You know, and I want to say too that, you know, we live in a time where sometimes it's not always the popular thing to bring certain people on and to allow them to speak. But you know, I think in most cases it's not a big deal. Obviously, like there's certain people on the planet that I can think of that I would not bring onto the show because their values morally are nowhere near aligning with mine. Like, they're just bad people. But you know, I don't know. We need to get back to like where we were in like 2012, 13, 14, where, you know,
free speech.
Yeah, but like we still we have free speech. Obviously, free speech comes with responsibility. It always has, right? It's never really like 100% free. But we need to get back to a time where someone can say something controversial, but without having to worry so much about like being canceled and all these people. We need and you know why? Because the other side, what we need to do is instead of bashing someone because you don't agree with them, the best way, if you really don't believe in something that somebody's saying and you really don't like it and you're really against it, that's an opportunity for you to then chime in respectfully in a mature fashion with dialogue with your ideas. And that's how we can make the world a better place. Because at the end of the day, conspiracy theories, all these different things, there are some of those conspiracies and ideas that from a political perspective really upset people and such, but erase all of that. I just want wars to end. I just want people to be able to have homes and be able to live out their dreams. I want children to be safe. I want people to have enough food to eat and have a roof over their head and somewhere to sleep. You know, that's so bad, right? Like, we could talk about whatever we want and it could offend somebody, right? But at the end of the day, I just want a future for my children, my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and all the generations after me that are better than the one that I lived through. That's it. I just want people to feel safe in their own homes and environments. And you know, I hope there's a future one day where you know, like the Israelis and the Palestinians give each other a hug. You know what I mean? Like, the people that have been fighting each other for so long. I want to see them sit down at a table with a handshake. I want to see that type of thing. I want to see Russia and America, you know, build something beautiful. I want to see China and North Korea build something beautiful. I want to see Afghanistan and Iran build something beautiful. I just want everybody to get along. And I know it's a long, hard road.
I'm sick and
I think we have it in us. I do. I think we have it in us. Now, I know it's a little utopian, but I think we have the potential to do it.
We, as this show goes on, Tom, we get more philosophical as we go along.
I know. I always end up saying something that's like, you should put. It's got to have music behind it, right, or something. Like, it just gets all epic. No, seriously, dude. I just want a safer, better world. I don't want any more war, hate. You know, it's like, if I was in control of everything, we wouldn't even have a president of the United States. We would have a council of the United States. It would be a group of people, not a single person, but we would have an actual, really well thought out council of individuals that represent a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, Green Party, Tea Party, all of them. And they all sit down and they all talk and they have dinner together and they laugh together and they get to share stories with each other. And then they go out, start talking about laws and things like that. They get to know one another. They get to become friends, camaraderie, create a connection, a rapport with each other, so that when they start making decisions for the rest of everybody else, there's a level of care there, and they will feel the actual weight of responsibility on their shoulders. not where we're at now, where people just pass bills because their rich buddy slipped a fucking $100 bill in their pocket and said, "Yo, dude, vote this." Like, that's not that the government needs to be in a position where it truly serves not only the people, but it serves itself too. It all needs to be interconnected so that it works for everyone. It's like these laws work for the people who made the laws and for the people who didn't make the laws. It needs to be in the actual best interest of everyone.
There's something that I know for a fact that is just because I've seen it firsthand. Most of the FBI, the CIA, NSA, all of those groups, they don't look at the general public as equals. I was watching a podcast the other day, and there's a CIA guy and an FBI guy, and they were talking about the role of government, and they were saying the general public is not able to take the knowledge that we have of the threats in the world. They don't want to know. So we're like the daddy and we're like the mommy, and we need to, block our children from the people that want to kill them. That was their attitude, and that's prevalent all through those agencies. They feel like they are doing you a favor by keeping you in the dark on threats and on different things. And I've seen it so many times. They get this they have this superiority complex. It's like a rookie cop that first gets his badge and he's pulling some over and he's kind of bending some rights and kind of flexing them a little bit, and it's that kind of vibe, except they take it to another level of we're the protectors, we're the gatekeepers. You don't need to know these bad things. Mommy and daddy will talk about them in the bedroom. Kids, you stay in this room while the adults talk over here, and we'll give you what you need to know if you need to know it. And that is everywhere. My brother's an FBI agent. Just like that. I mean, he's retired now, but it's like it was the same kind of thing that he was so holding everything in, and he's protected, and I'm like, man, it's talk, let it out, but they look at it as a nanny state. It's incredible when you talk to these people, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Jeez. No, I don't think it is. But I guess there's some nuance here, though, right? Like from some perspective, it depends on who you are. Like there's some people who may appreciate that because maybe they really would prefer to live their lives without hearing about certain things. So I can understand that, and I'm sure that there are certain people in the FBI or the CIA that have that perspective, but deep down in their hearts, they really are a good person. They really do care, and they really do believe in their heart that they are doing the right thing.
Right.
But then there are the other ones that it's all a saber rattling, dick waving match, and whose bomb is bigger. It's not so simple. That's why, like, as I've gotten older, I try not to. I'm still guilty of it, but I try not to use that blanket statement of, the government this, because there's a lot of good people in government. I've met some. They're like really tremendous, hardworking people that are in every branch of government. Really, truly.
Yeah,
it's just
wonderful.
Some of them. Get lost in the crowd because they end up getting outnumbered by individuals with an agenda.
Every time you had a firing squad, you had 10 people stand there. You had one person with a bullet, and nobody knew who got the bullet. So that's what it is you have people that are working in government that they have the best hearts and they're great people. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're helping and they're doing, serving their country, and but nobody really knows who has that bullet. And so when they call it like the bureaucracy, but it's really managerialism. So you're blocked by this plethora of policy, not laws, not constitutional laws, not state laws, even just policy of what you want to do. I mean, think about this. Like one of the first things I noticed when I left the U.S. and I moved here is, what can I do in the U.S. that I don't need to ask permission for? I can't think of one thing. Like if I'm asking permission for anything that I want to do, if I want to drive a car, I need permission. If I want to open a business, I need permission. If I want to, anything. I need permission for, just to go to the store to buy the food that I need to, for my family to survive. Like, you need permission for everything. So you are not free. When I came here, I'm in this gray area now. Like, I'm not a citizen here yet. So like, I'm out of their kind of laws, and I'm out of the US kind of tax, slave world. I'm living in this little sliver of gray area, and you talk about the freest I've ever felt in my entire life.
Really?
No question. Just
I
like
really-
Digby, when Digby was talking about when he sold everything, I know when he was saying that, I was like, man, I know exactly how you feel, because I was like, it was like a weight, this black cloud that I had over my head, gone. Everything's gone, and I'm like, wow, this is what freedom feels like. I can still get in trouble if I do something stupid, but I'm not having these silly regulations.
As you should,
like,
if depending.
exactly. But I don't have these constant, oh, is your insurance up to date? Is this, because it's just insane what I got rid of, and the way it makes me feel. I never want to leave it. I can never want to leave it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Paul, you and me, we're free.
Yeah, no
We don't
question.
exist to the people that matter. Well, that give the illusion of mattering. We're sort of outside of a system, and especially me, I will never be anywhere longer than 3 months, and then I move on to another part of the world. I'm beholden unto nobody.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Like, I can't explain how much of a difference in, like, sometimes, Tom, when you talk about you fight depression, and you're fighting these, you're in the matrix.
I know, and I know it too. I see the bars.
Yeah,
Trust me, I see it every time I wake up early in the morning. Like tomorrow, I'm gonna wake up.
You're on this
I'm
constant
gonna drag
rat
my
race.
ass.
You're
I'm gonna
living
drag my ass out of
paycheck to
bed,
paycheck. Yep.
and I'm gonna go do a bunch of shit that I don't feel like doing
When
just to live.
Right.
When I lived in the UK, I had weird little OCDs, little things, or little things like if I didn't do something a certain way, I would feel like something bad would happen. Just something that it like ingrained in my head for years. I've just lived with it very quietly, never really made a big deal out of it.
Me too.
I'll go to pick up a fork, and then I'll change my mind, and I go, no, I need to pick up the other fork.
Yep. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I'm the same way, Digby. I just don't talk about it very much. With my family, they know, but it can get pretty ridiculous sometimes. I won't lie.
I mean, I wouldn't wear green for ages because I thought that if I wore green, something bad would happen because I wore green. Something bad.
Yep. I know what that feels like. Believe you me.
Yeah, and that's ingrained in us, and I think there's a lot of people that have very similar things. And you know what happened the day I left the UK, and the day I drove off into the sunset with all my stuff in the back of my car on the way to meet my family in Portugal? Do you know what happened?
You wore green.
Well, yeah, I did. I wore green pants. I have not had that at all since I left.
That's interesting.
Seriously, I haven't. My temper has been better. I'm not short with anybody. I'm level-headed. I'm looking at myself on a camera right now while we're filming this, and I can even see the difference in my own face. Yeah, I feel it. I see it. It's almost like I feel like my aura is different. I have headspace. I've never been more present with my wife. I've never been more present with my children. And, Katie, basically living off one salary at the moment while I'm getting myself sorted and figuring out what I want to do. And I've got a few irons in the fire and stuff like that. But, we're living off one salary, whereas before we lived off two. And now there's money left over at the end of the month or at the end of the week when there wasn't before. And we were living off two salaries. All to pay for a life that we didn't need to be living because we were told by somebody else that that's what we should look for and that's what we should want. And now I'm on this journey. I'm 2 weeks in. I've met some of the most like-minded people I've ever met in my entire life. And I cannot tell you how much I love it. And it's got, and I have to be honest, for the last 2 weeks for the show, I've been distracted by the beauty of the life around me. I've hardly been on social media, and I almost kind of need to find my new balance now to make both sides of my life work because I love this show. I love the connections that I've made on Twitter and Facebook and everything like that. But I now need to reset and find the balance that works between actual living life, which I don't think I've ever really done before, and actually finding a way to still communicate with people through social media and stuff like that at an acceptable rate that still leaves me the balance that I found. Because I'm a new man. I am.
No kidding.
And
Welcome to the real world, Leo.
Right now, because
Liberation.
and I'm going to put the YouTube handle at the bottom there. So my wife and I have started a new YouTube channel.
Sandy just brought it up.
And
your timing is perfect.
What she said?
She said that I watched your family video. It was beautiful.
Thank you, Sandy. And you know, and we're doing this new channel. It's called Our Journey to Now, because the reason why is because now is the aim is to be present. So it's our journey to being present and being in the now and living in the now. And it's very reflective when you sit yourself down and start recording yourself and do a video diary and film the beautiful moments of your day and maybe not so beautiful moments of your day. It's very reflecting, and it makes you realize, and it makes you stop and watch and look at the way things were, look at the way things are now, and the way they could be. So if you're watching this, our first episode is up. I put it up the other day, and it's just a snippet in the day of our life and our new journey. And I'd really appreciate if anybody's out there watching it, give it a follow. Yeah, that's all I'll say. But I can't recommend what I have done and what Paul has done enough, because it's currently the only real way to free yourself from the system that everybody else in the world is trapped.
I was making $120,000 a year and still living paycheck to paycheck. I was 1 month away from being homeless at any given time for years, and it's insane. No matter how much you make, you're going to spend it. And like here, I do not own a car. My entire monthly budget, for rent, electricity, internet, cell phone, water, $500 a month. So I keep everything saved. It's amazing. And I'm in a metropolis of a city that's like very underrated. The food here is amazing. If I go out to eat, I went out to eat tonight. My, a beautiful lasagna, $6, $5, it's cheap as dirt to eat here, to live here, to exist here, and it's beautiful. And like, it just frees you. No car, no insurance.
You
I have
feel rich.
I'm mega rich here. Yeah.
But and I don't mean monetarily, but you feel rich in like spirit.
Well, even in spirit, but like even just like I don't ever have to balance a checkbook ever again living here, ever. It doesn't. I mean, when I tip waiters $2, they're like, "Oh my God, sir, thank you so much. It was way too much." I'm like going, okay, but the people here are amazing. Like it's a lot of my friends moved here, like the people that I've met here and stuff. They live here to kind of springboard into the rest of the world. So it's kind of like in the middle of like the Dubai, Egypt, and Italy and Europe. Like it's right smack dab in the middle, just north of Greece. So like you got a wide spectrum to go to, and flights are cheap. So if you want to take a weekend and go to Krakow, Poland, $40 if you want to go to, Hungary and, go whatever.
I'm Polish and Hungarian, so and Italian. So
I mean, so it's there's a whole life out there. Like you can actually travel and do the things. In the U.S., man, if you have 2 weeks of vacation, you're like woohoo, and then 1 week you probably take just to sleep, and the next week you go to Mexico or Florida or something, and it's like it's no comparison. Here I'm like, hey, this weekend let's go to Rome. Yay! All right, hop over. $50 flight. Man. It's a whole different world, man, and it like Digby's saying, it frees your mind, it frees you up. You have more time than you know what to do with. It's And the other thing, food. The food here is far superior.
I go through the day at the moment, and I go, Jesus Christ, how did I ever find time to fit work in?
Yeah.
Because you blink and it's just like, oh, it's lunchtime. I haven't even started yet, or whatever. It's time flows differently. Everything flows differently. You feel different. It's just
You feel alive. Like you're seeing things for the first time, and it makes you feel like a kid again. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't wait till you visit here, bud.
We definitely will be. I mean, the problem is because UK voted for Brexit, we're only allowed in Europe for 3 months at a time before we then have to leave for 3 months. So
Albania's not part of the Schengen, though.
Yeah, exactly. But we've got to get there, and it's a hell of a journey. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go to Morocco for 3 months. Maybe go stay somewhere in the Atlas Mountains, and we're also everywhere we're going, we're looking for the right community. So we want world schoolers and other people with children and a real sense of community. So we want to make sure we have that wherever we go. So we're going to do Morocco next, I think, for 3 months, and then we're going to spend 3 months doing bits in Europe to get to the next Schengen country where we can stay for longer. So we're in the planning process at the moment, but we're here till just after Christmas. So we're looking for somewhere just after Christmas. But no, it's nice. We feel free. But anyway, it's Tom and I said at the beginning of tonight's show, let's try and keep it to close enough an hour and a half.
I was just thinking about that. I swear it was. That's so funny. But I knew it was going to go over. Yeah. I knew if we had a good conversation on our hands, which, that's all your fault, that we would be going much longer. But it's great. I talked to Fringe, and there was a little bit of like a scheduling mix-up thing, but I'm doing the space with them at 9:30. So like I'm in the clear here, but I got to go put tires on my car in a little bit here, and it's pitch black outside now, which I don't really care. But I think we've hit the point where I can hit that other button about speculating on things. What do you say, Dick?
I want to answer Sandy's question. Yes, we are aiming to come to the States next year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
North America, then go through to Central, and then into South America. So yeah.
That is super, super cool. And then he's going to come to the U.S. and be like, yep, going right back to Albania.
I'm out of here.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Speculation Station.
So, this question, interestingly enough, I got from a post that I made not that long ago, but I was working on the post because I wanted to get a really good image for it. But today's speculation station question is, do rogue military groups exist that are involved in clandestine missions using technology derived from non-human sources?
Yes.
Yeah, you think so?
Yes, definitely.
According to Greer's latest thing, when he had the
whistleblower,
the press club thing, whatever he did, the disclosure.
Yeah, the press club 2.0. Yeah, that's kind of what inspired that question. Again,
one of the guys was like all about that. Like he had a whole story about that. It was incredible.
Greer is polarizing, and but all of that aside, I'm looking at the information, and it's like, I've been hearing about these types of things for years. So it is a question that I ponder. Like, we're hearing about all these weird situations that are happening over in Peru. Digby's like hell bent on trying to get over there at some point to actually like investigate some of that on the ground. And week after week, I keep seeing new clips of people over there saying that there's like people flying around shooting lasers. And I'm just like, dude, what the hell is going on over there?
It's not stopping in Peru, and I hope that next year we will be heading over there. Katie's found a community over there that she wants to visit. So and personally, I would like our journey to end somewhere in Central or South America, just because I think it's a beautiful country, and I could just hide on a sandy beach somewhere and live the rest of my life. I know it sounds awful, doesn't it?
So bad, terrible. God, I'd rather be here, getting up early, going to move furniture. Yeah.
Hey man, you can come with us. It's fine.
Yeah, one of these days, the rat race will end.
Like I know I'm in the minority of this, but like to me, the Tic Tac is probably U.S. tech. I think it's very 50-50 possibility there. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. just because some of the things that it did, like, would be it like going to its cap point afterwards. I know Fravor was saying, yeah, we don't have anything like that, but I think there was probably something like that, and they were using that, and they were effing with those, with a live sortie, and which is crazy to
Yeah.
do, but I think they're
It
like, let's
is.
see
Well,
what
see,
this
that's
thing can really do.
my issue with it, though, is like, I then have to think about why would they do that, especially in the midst of an exercise like that, where you do run the risk of actual engagement happening if something
Right.
were to occur. Like, why are they doing that? Why would they do that?
I mean, just to see what reaction would be from pilots that have no idea what they're doing or what they're seeing, and then seeing if they would, if people would fire on it. Maybe they're, if are we gonna have trigger happy people? Because what David Fravor was right. If you do jam radar, that's an act of war, and you do have permission to fire in a lot of those cases. So
Yes.
I mean, I guess maybe they're saying, let's not tell them. We know where the cap point is. I went back to the cap point, which is, I mean, if it was NHI, it would have to know the plan beforehand, because they're not putting that on like a computer. They're planning that out with, I mean, on a screen probably, but not during the sortie. So I don't know. It seems to me like maybe it's probably us. Probably.
Well,
I mean, maybe from
if
NHI
anybody could
tech,
do it,
but yeah.
Right.
That's
Well,
what
see,
I'm saying.
that's the thing, is like the cat point thing. That aspect of the story definitely sounds like something that would be within their capability, right? Like because if they're able to weave in and out of, time and space, or God knows what else, they could have easily just fast forwarded it a little bit and figured out where it was, and then went back, and that's how they figured it out. Who knows? But now let's just speculate and say it was US tech, right? And we see the characteristics, we see what it is capable of doing. That means that there is a country. It doesn't even who cares if it's the United States. Someone on Earth has technology that can do that. Like, it is a little frightening. I will admit. And I don't. If the Tic Tac was man-made, I very much believe that would have been reverse engineered from technology that was not originally from Earth. To go from, an F-16 and all of our finest fighters that we have in the air right now, Hellcats, and there's tons of them. To go from that to what that thing was doing,
Well,
like, if you really listen to what Fravor says, I mean, it's like we don't have anything in the public inventory even close.
Think about it from the other side, from Kitty Hawk in 1909 to propeller planes 10 years later, and then jet planes 18 years after that, jet engines, rocket engines after that, 10-year segments. Since the 1940s, really, with jet engines and rocket engines, no progression. There's been zero. So maybe, I mean, I remember when the SR-71 came out, and I was like, wow,
I was just
incredible.
I just put the SR-71 into my search bar because I wanted to see what year that came out.
67.
It was introduced in 66. It's a 66, so 66, 67.
Yeah.
And that thing still holds records.
Yeah. So when you think about since 67, and we didn't even know about it until the late 80s when it was finally kind of released, but so that was another 20 years. Like, so there's progression, but since then, we're in 2023. There's no progression, like zero.
There's actually regression. Because if you think not so long ago, we had the ability to have passenger liners that would fly supersonic between continents.
The F-35 is slower than the F-16s.
Yeah, but we used to have Concorde.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that anymore. It's almost like we hit a ceiling that they went, this is as far as you can go, and you're not allowed to go faster than that. Go back.
We went to the moon in the 60s.
Concorde.
We went to the moon.
Yeah.
We went to the moon.
Yeah. And we
in
didn't.
the 60s. I know some people don't believe it, but we went to the moon.
Go back.
We went to the moon.
On a lesser technology than this. Think about that.
Right. Like, it's like, come on, man. Like, So when you look at it from that perspective, like, of course you would assume that there has been advancement beyond what is publicly shown, but it's like, I wonder what would have created a situation where behind the scenes they're still going, and God knows what they've achieved and where what plateau they've reached. But why is there this sudden cutoff where it appears publicly like we're not really making much progress? We're just making things faster and maybe more efficient, and updated as far as the interaction between the machine and the pilot, the human being. Why this sudden drape of secrecy on those types of achievements? Because, like you said, like, you go from Kitty Hawk, 18 years later, boom, 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 boom. Those things were all visible publicly, some of it, and then eventually it would come out, like the SR-71 Blackbird. So why does it look that way to us publicly? Like, what made them decide to conduct their operations like this, where now the real, like, juicy stuff keeps potentially advancing behind the scenes, and, like, they're not even using it in war as far as we know, maybe sometimes, and they try to get away with it. But, like, what caused that? It's weird.
Well, when you look back, let's say that the triangle is US Tech. If you look back at Belgium, at different countries in the world that would have these sightings and such, maybe they are using them and then saying they're UFOs. We don't know what those are. That's not us. And it gives them a complete plausible deniability. It gives them ability to use the technology without having any responsibility. They could go in and do whatever they want. But I mean, that's a real scenario. That to me is like that's actually something that like DeLong touched on in his book. He wrote about the black triangles thing that was amazing, capabilities. And whenever somebody saw it, they would also, oh yeah, maybe crazy UFOs. Let's let those people tell a story about the UFO, and then we just kind of write it off. And that's the position they've taken. But I mean, imagine the carte blanche you would have if you have that sort of technology, like a Tic Tac. You could drop in anywhere in the world, from in space roughly, and do what you want. Take as many pictures as you want. Take off. I mean, there would be a massive outcry. Number one, and number two, if you don't tell anybody about it, or you just tell them, oh, it's all UFO stuff, let's keep looking that direction. You could do whatever you want. You can spy on whoever you want, and it's not you. It's not America. So
there's your at least there's one reason, right? Spying.
Or attacking, or even like directed energy weapons. Let's say you go and they got the laser beams they're using now on the rockets. Let's say you do that on a person. I mean, you could see a license plate from a satellite in space. You could read a license plate on a car. I mean, you have one directed energy weapon pointed at a person walking down the street, and he gets massive brain cancer, dies 2 weeks later. You have complete plausible deniability. So, I mean, it's
scary.
Yeah,
it's really scary. Very frightening.
The potential is there.
That.
Yep. That's my view.
There's a lot of mystery on our hands. I think that's a really, really interesting take. So I mean, again, it's one of those situations where it's like I could see all of that being the case alongside visitation by something, interaction with this planet.
I think the alongside is the key word. Yeah, I don't deny that there is definitely some sort of NHI out there. My question always comes when the government tries to tell you how to look at it. It tries to tell you what to look at, drip feeds you certain amounts of information that's just enough to confuse you even more. That's when I go, okay, they've got this, but we're looking in the wrong spot. Like, I don't know. The government will never, ever, I don't think, ever really come clean with this. It's always going to be people like you and Digby and, that are going to make this real. They're going to find the truth one day.
I hope so. I really hope so. Well, I think now's a good time for us to wrap up and conclude, because I'm sure Digby is trying to go to bed.
Well, I've also been holding my phone for the last.
Yeah, I was gonna say your wrist is probably so
check
tired.
his biceps in the morning. You're gonna be like, yeah,
dude,
man.
you're gonna be ready to enter strongman competitions like by next week.
You're gonna be ripped.
I shit you not. Well, I want to thank you, Paul, for joining us. You've been such a great supporter of the show, and that means a lot to Digby and I.
I love you guys.
You know, we're just two guys that have, you know, goals and dreams, and I want this to be what I do instead of that rat race. So I really love hearing from both of you just how you guys are feeling about the state of your living. It makes me feel like those types of things are achievable. So it gives me motivation to you know, pursue what I dream about on a daily basis. But this was such an interesting conversation. I had no idea it was going to go this long, but it needed to. It was organic.
Sure
It
did.
didn't drag out. We covered so many different topics. Thank you to everyone that's in the chat still. Sandy, Contigo, Nicotina. I mean, there's so many people that showed up, that came and went and came back. Darcy, Dream Bagel. Dream Bagel, I like that name. Sounds delicious. Chris, and my friend Aliens Exist, who another one of my real life friends. Really happy to see you here. iCerial, what a killer comment you left. But if you guys are fans of the show, you like what you saw today, we obviously have 7 other episodes that you can watch. I have my YouTube channel, cortexzero. Digby has his new channel that shows the journey of his family as they venture around the world. It's our journey to now. Make sure you guys go and check that out. It's on YouTube. Leave a like, subscribe, do all the things, because it makes us feel good and it helps us reach more viewers. And the more viewers we have, the more interesting these conversations get, because you guys interact with us, and that really helps drive the show. Paul, if people want to continue the conversation with you outside of our podcast and our chat, where we usually find you on a weekly basis, where can people get in contact with you, have a chat, and things of that nature?
Yeah, the easiest is find me on Twitter. It's Marduk Paul J. Pretty easy. But I respond to everybody, so I only have a few followers. I'm not really in this to make a living or anything. I have to do it for knowledge. I'm happy as a clam to come on your show. I really enjoy talking to you guys. Finally meet you.
We would love to have you back, man. We would
Anytime,
really like
man.
to have you back. Definitely.
Yeah,
you were like, it felt like we had a third co-host. It really did. You did such a good job.
I couldn't hear you, Digby. You cut out.
I said it feels like we didn't so much have a guest this week, more of a guest co-host.
Yeah, I totally agree, because you were here for our segments. You're the first person that was here for like the whole show and our different segments that we do. And you inadvertently kicked off the new weekly Woo segment, which was fantastic that happened. That was like by chance. I was like, Digby, I don't know if it's going to be this week. That's right. It pretty much, that's what I call it, at least. But Digby, what are your closing thoughts, my friend?
Man, it's just I don't know, really. It's been a wonderful show. I'm sorry I missed most of it. Thanks to the internet. I'm going to go now, and I'm going to watch Paul's interview because I missed all of it. But it's been great to catch up with you again, Tom and Paul. It's been great to speak to you face to face. I know we had a brief chat yesterday, but it's been fantastic to share some thoughts with you. And thank you to everybody who's been watching this week. We've got some great guests lined up for the coming weeks. Chris Sharp, I believe, has said that he's free for November to come on the show. We've got Michael P. Masters coming up in December as well, which is going to be a fantastic one to have on. And also to all of you that are watching, we really want experiencers to come on and be part of the show. We want to hear what you have experienced. We want to hear what you want to say. We are going to have a segment every single week where an experiencer gets to come on and tell the world, our viewers, everybody, their story. So if you're watching this, you want a safe space to talk about what you've experienced, please get in touch with the show, either by the email address that's on our YouTube channel, my Twitter handle, or Tom's Twitter handle. Just send us a direct message. Let's have a conversation. And if you feel comfortable and you want to do so, we'd love to have you on the show, because what makes us different to every other YouTube channel is that we like to keep it very human here. Yes, we like to have key speakers come on with, great pedigree, but we also want to speak to you, the people, hear the real stories that are out there. So please do get in touch.
I think that is a perfect way to wrap up the show. And I will just say thank you to both of you for sharing this time with me here tonight. I am going to now go put a hoodie on and replace some tires on my car. So it's kind of like, back to reality.
So
But
manly.
what's that?
I said that's just so manly.
Yeah, I might flex a little bit. Might grunt. Get my hands dirty a little bit. Maybe
Yeah.
take my shirt off. It's too cold, dude. It's way too cold.
Is it a Diet Coke?
I mean, I'll let you decide. How's that? I'll let you manage my tire changing operation. You can be like my agent. No, this way. No, that lug nut. No. I'll get you on FaceTime. You can help me do it. Nah, it shouldn't take me too long. But Paul, thank you again so much for being with us. That was such a great conversation. I had such a good time with it. And honestly, because it's been as long as it has, like, we like to take little clips of like interesting bits from our interviews and throw them up on social media. We're going to have quite a few from this one. And there's a good portion of them that are going to be you saying something. So good job, man.
Hey, man, anytime you need to fill in or anytime you need anything, just let me know, man. I'll do this just for fun. I don't expect anything in return. Just I'm thankful for your friendships.
We really appreciate that, man.
Because we don't get
one day.
I'll send you I don't know. I'll think of something to send you in the mail. I'll just autograph a piece of paper.
A heart emoji. That'll be perfect. Yeah.
So you open it up, and it's like literally just it's printed on like really crappy paper. The printer ran out of ink, so it's only like half red.
Like a little bit here and there. Yeah. No,
I had a little bit left over for you.
I love talking about it, and I have a wealth of knowledge on it. I've read a lot of stuff and a lot of theories and thoughts that, like I said, change every week. But if you ever need anything, guys, just hit me up. You know where to find me, and I'll be there for you.
That sounds good, man.
All right, guys.
You guys all have a great rest of your evening. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I am Tom for Digby and Paul. This has been the Unidentified Anomalous Podcast. We will see you next Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and whatever the hell time it is where Digby is. You guys have a great night. Take care. We love you.
Bye.